Hello, friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The file reached me in the second week of July. The corners of the manila envelope from the Phoenix office were stained with Arizona's fine dust that gets into everything. Inside were 3 incident reports, 2 witness statements that contradicted each other on every important point, and a single square photograph of 6 empty, worn chairs arranged in a perfect circle in a deserted place. I'm Special Agent Nathan Briggs. 22 years with the Bureau, 16 of those working cases that don't make sense on paper but somehow make even less sense in person. When my supervisor handed me this assignment, he didn't make eye contact. That should have been my first warning. The second warning was the case designation. Operation Sandfall. Operations get names. Incidents get numbers. When the Bureau names something before it's even classified, it means someone upstairs is already nervous. The town was called Persistence, population 214 according to the last census, though the way Deputy Marshal Colton spoke about it, you'd think half those people were ghosts already. I met him at a truck stop 17 miles outside the municipal limits, which apparently qualified as the town's main commercial district. He was leaning against a sun-bleached Ford Ranger, hat pulled low, aviators reflecting nothing but white sky and heat shimmer. "You're the Fed," he said. It wasn't a question. "Special Agent Briggs." He nodded once, didn't offer his hand. "They tell you what happened?" 6 people disappeared over a 9-day period. No bodies, no crime scene, no common connection between the victims except geographic proximity. "They tell you about the tape?" I looked at him. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, but his face had that particular weathering that comes from too many hours staring into distances that never end. The kind of face that's seen something it doesn't want to talk about. "What tape?" He opened the passenger door of the Ranger. "Better if you hear it yourself." The drive to Persistence took 40 minutes on roads that barely qualified as roads. Washboard dirt tracks that rattled your teeth and made you wonder if your spine would ever properly align again. The landscape was exactly what you'd expect from this part of Arizona. Endless stretches of creosote and ocotillo, mountains in the distance that never seemed to get any closer, and a sun that didn't so much shine as punish. Colton didn't talk much during the drive. Every few miles he'd point out a landmark, a collapsed fence post here, a rusted water tank there, the kind of details that only mattered if you knew the land. The temperature gauge on the dashboard read 118 degrees. Outside, the world looked like it was melting at the edges. "How long you been working this area?" I asked. 8 years. Born 2 towns over. My father worked these routes before me. "You ever see anything like this before?" He was quiet for a long time, long enough that I thought he might not answer. Then, "No, but my father did. 1987. 4 people that time. He never talked about it after the case closed." "Case closed as in solved?" "Case closed as in filed away." We passed a sign that read, "Persistence. Founded 1892. Someone had spray painted over the population number. The replacement figure read, "Unknown." The town itself was a study in abandonment trying not to look abandoned. Main Street had 6 buildings that showed signs of recent use. A general store with bars on the windows. A post office that doubled as the sheriff's substation. A diner with a flickering open sign. A gas station with pumps that looked older than I was. A motel with 8 rooms and a parking lot full of sun-bleached vehicles and a small medical clinic with a faded red cross painted on the door. Everything else was empty. Not destroyed, not burned down, just empty in that specific way that says people left but didn't take anything with them. Screen doors hanging open, laundry still on lines, a bicycle lying on its side in a yard, one wheel slowly spinning in the hot wind. Colton parked in front of the sheriff's substation. Inside was cooler by maybe 5 degrees, which is to say it was still hot enough to make you feel like your blood was simmering. A single desk, a filing cabinet, a cot in the corner, and a UHF radio setup that looked military surplus. On the wall was a map of the county with 6 red pins clustered in a rough circle about 3 miles northeast of town. The disappearances, Colton said, tapping the pins. Miguel Ortega, 47, Sarah Danner, 32, Rick and Linda Kowalski, both 61, Jamie Reeves, 19, and Marcus Holt, 54. Happened between June 1st and June 9th. Any connection between them? None we could find. Different backgrounds, different jobs, different social circles. Miguel worked at the gas station. Sarah was a teacher at the elementary school. The Kowalskis were retired, just passing through. Jamie was a dropout working odd jobs. Marcus ran the general store. Only thing they had in common was they all lived or stayed within 5 miles of town. Witnesses? 3. All say the same thing, more or less. They saw the missing person one evening, everything seemed normal. Next morning they were gone. No signs of struggle, no indications they planned to leave. In some cases, their vehicles were still parked where they left them. Keys still in the ignition. I studied the map. The red pins formed an almost perfect circle. Radius approximately 2.3 miles. In the center of the circle was nothing, just empty desert. "What's out there?" I asked, pointing to the center. "Nothing. Old survey roads from a mining operation in the 30s. Couple of abandoned equipment sheds. Nothing that would draw 6 people at different times." "And the tape?" Colton moved to the desk, opened a drawer, pulled out an evidence bag. Inside was a small digital voice recorder, the kind you could buy at any electronics store for $40. The recorder was covered in fine dust and showed signs of sun exposure, plastic slightly warped. "Found this 4 days ago," Colton said. "Exactly in the center of that circle. It was sitting on top of a flat rock, like someone placed it there deliberately. No tracks leading to or from it. No disturbance in the surrounding sand. You listened to it? Once. Haven't played it since." He handed me the evidence bag. Through the plastic, I could see the recorder's LCD display was still lit. Battery indicator showing half charge. The record button was pressed in, locked in the on position. "Still recording?" I asked. "Has been for 4 days straight. Shouldn't be possible. Battery should have died after 12 hours, max." I turned the bag over in my hands. There was something else, something Colton wasn't saying. I could see it in the way he wouldn't look at the recorder directly, the way his jaw tightened when I asked about it. "What's on the tape, Deputy?" He finally met my eyes. "You need to hear it. But I'm going to tell you right now, after you do, you're going to want to leave. You're going to want to file a report that says this is a dead end, no leads, case suspended pending new evidence. You're going to want to forget you ever came here. I'm not in the habit of running from evidence. This isn't evidence, this is something else." He pulled a small portable speaker from another drawer, connected it to the recorder through the evidence bag's seal access point, and pressed play. For the first 5 seconds, there was nothing but the hiss of dead air and the occasional pop of static. Then a voice emerged from the background noise. Male, middle-aged, calm in the way people are calm when they're reading a script or reciting something memorized. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Pause. 10 seconds of static. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Same voice, same cadence, same inflection on every word. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Colton stopped the playback. It repeats, exactly the same, every 43 seconds. I timed it. For 4 days straight, that sentence over and over. I had someone at the state lab analyze the waveform. It's not a loop. Each repetition is a unique recording. Same voice speaking the same words with identical timing and intonation, but technically distinct iterations. I stared at the recorder. Who's the speaker? We don't know. Ran it through voice analysis. No match in any database. What about the 6 missing people? Could it be one of them? We had families provide voice samples for comparison. No match. I picked up the evidence bag again, held it up to the light. The recorder was a standard commercial model, nothing special about it. But there was something about the way it sat in the bag. Something about the weight of it in my hand that felt wrong. Not physically wrong, but wrong in some other way I couldn't articulate. You said you found this in the center of the circle, yes? Show me. Colton hesitated. It's 3 miles out. Heat's going to be pushing 120 by the time we get there. I need to see the location. He nodded slowly, like a man agreeing to something he knows is a bad idea. We'll take the Ranger. There's a trail that gets us within half a mile. We load it up with water, a GPS unit, and a handheld radio for backup communication. Colton also grabbed a shotgun from a locked case, which struck me as either very cautious or very informed. Planning on encountering wildlife? I asked. Something like that. The trail was worse than the main road, if that was possible. We followed a series of survey markers left by mining operations decades ago, posts that were little more than rotted wood and faded paint. The GPS guided us through terrain that all looked identical, endless variations of sand and scrub and rock formations that could have been 5 years old or 5,000. After 20 minutes, we stopped. According to the GPS, we were 0.4 miles from the target coordinates. Colton killed the engine and we sat for a moment in the sudden silence, broken only by the tick of cooling metal and the whisper of wind through the window seals. From here we walk, he said. The heat outside the vehicle was like walking into a physical wall. The air was so hot it hurt to breathe, felt like inhaling steam from a kettle. My sunglasses did almost nothing against the glare, and within 30 seconds I could feel sweat soaking through my shirt. We walked northwest, following the GPS coordinates. Colton led, I followed, both of us conserving energy and words. The landscape was utterly featureless, a monotony of desert that seemed to stretch in every direction without variation. No landmarks, no distinguishing characteristics. Nothing to suggest why anyone would come out here deliberately. After 15 minutes, Colton stopped and pointed. There. At first I didn't see anything. Then my eyes adjusted to what I was looking for and I spotted it. A flat rock, roughly 3 feet in diameter, sitting alone in a small clearing of hard-packed sand. The rock was dark basalt, unusual for this area, and perfectly level on top. Around it, the sand was undisturbed. No footprints, no tire tracks, no indication that anyone had been here recently. Except the rock wasn't quite alone. In the sand around it, at precise intervals, were 6 shallow depressions, each about 2 feet across, arranged in a perfect circle with the rock at the center. The chairs, I said. From the photograph, yeah. Found them here 3 days before the recorder. Cheap folding chairs. The kind you buy for $5 at a hardware store. They were sitting here, evenly spaced, facing inward. No explanation for how they got here or why. Where are they now? Evidence lockup in Phoenix. Fingerprint analysis came back with prints from all 6 missing persons. Only their prints. No one else's. I walked slowly around the circle, studying the depressions, the rock, the surrounding area. The sand here was different from the rest of the desert. Harder packed, almost like it had been compressed by something heavy. But there were no tracks, no trails, nothing to indicate how 6 people in 6 chairs had arrived at this spot. You're telling me 6 people came out here, sat in these chairs, and then vanished? I'm not telling you anything. I'm showing you what we found. I knelt next to one of the depressions, touched the compacted sand. It was cool, several degrees cooler than the surrounding desert, which shouldn't have been possible in this heat. When you found the recorder, was it playing? Yes, same message, same interval. And it was sitting on this rock, centered, perfectly centered. I stood, looked at the GPS unit. The coordinates placed us at exactly 34.7, 192 112, 81 W. I pulled out my phone, checked if there was any cell coverage. Nothing. We were in a dead zone, which was normal for this part of Arizona, but there was something about the absolute absence of signal that felt deliberate. Deputy, I need you to be straight with me. What aren't you telling me about this case? Colton was quiet for a long time, staring at the circle of depressions like they might suddenly offer an explanation. When he spoke, his voice was lower, harder to hear over the wind. After we found the recorder, I came back here. Alone, I wanted to listen to it in situ, see if there was something about the location that made it make sense. So I sat on that rock and I played the tape. And nothing happened for about 5 minutes. Then I realized the sun was in the wrong position. When I'd sat down, it was mid-afternoon, sun almost directly overhead. But when I looked up, it was setting. I'd lost 3 hours. Lost or lost. One moment it was 2 p.m., the next moment it was 5 p.m. My watch had stopped. The GPS had reset, and the recorder was still playing the same message, but the timestamp on the recording had jumped forward by exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. I looked at him. His face was absolutely serious, no hint of uncertainty or deception. This was a man reporting facts as he understood them, regardless of how impossible those facts seemed. 3 hours and 17 minutes. Yes. Did you experience anything during that time? Any sensation, nothing. It was like blinking. 1 second, then the next. Except 3 hours had passed. I turned back to the rock, studied it more carefully. There was nothing remarkable about it, just a flat piece of basalt sitting in the desert. But there was something about it that made me not want to get too close. Something about the way it sat there so perfectly level in the middle of nowhere. Has anyone else experienced time loss out here? Not that I know of, but I'm the only one who's been back since we found the recorder. I filed a report with the county, but they told me to wait for federal assistance before proceeding. So I waited. And you're here. The families of the missing persons. They haven't been out here? We kept the location confidential. Told them we were following leads in multiple locations. Why? He was quiet again. That same hesitation I'd seen in the office. Because my father told me something before he died. He said if we ever found chairs in the desert, arranged in a circle, we should close the file and walk away. He said there are some things the desert keeps, and we should let it keep them. Your father was talking about the 1987 disappearances. Yes. Did he find chairs then? He never said. But 3 months after those 4 people vanished, he put in for early retirement, moved to Tucson, never came back to Persistence, and he never explained why. The wind picked up. carrying with it that peculiar smell of superheated rock and ancient dust. In the distance, I could hear something that might have been a hawk, or might have been wind through a crack in stone. The desert has a way of making every sound seem both close and infinitely far away. "I want to hear the tape again," I said. "Here, in this location." Colton reached into his pack, pulled out the evidence bag with the recorder. He handed it to me without a word. I sat down on the rock, felt the coolness of it through my pants, a coolness that shouldn't exist in 120-degree heat. I pulled the recorder from the bag, checked the display. Still recording, still half battery. I pressed play. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." The voice was clearer out here, sharper, like the desert itself was amplifying it. I could hear nuances I hadn't caught in the office, a slight wetness to the consonants, a barely perceptible accent that might have been West Texas or might have been something older. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." I looked at my watch. 3:47 p.m. The second hand was moving normally, steady tick-tick-tick around the dial. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." Colton was standing about 20 feet away, watching me carefully. His hand was near the shotgun, though I couldn't tell if that was conscious or reflexive. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." I counted, 43 seconds exactly between each repetition. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." The sun was directly overhead, fierce and white. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." I looked at my watch. 3:48 p.m. 1 minute had passed. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." Something moved in my peripheral vision, but when I turned to look, there was nothing there, just heat shimmer and empty desert. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." I pressed stop, checked my watch. 3:49 p.m. 2 minutes total, everything was normal. Except when I looked up at Colton, his expression had changed. He was staring at me like he'd just seen something impossible. "What?" I asked. "How long did you listen?" 2 minutes, maybe a little less. "Why?" He held up his own watch. "Agent Briggs, it's 5:32. I looked at my watch again. 3:49 p.m. Looked at the GPS unit on my belt. 3:49 p.m. Looked at the sun. It was setting. The shadow cast by the rock stretched long across the sand, pointing almost due east. The temperature had dropped to something closer to 90 degrees. The light had that particular golden quality that only comes in the hour before dusk. "That's not possible," I said. Colton walked closer, slowly, like approaching a spooked animal. "Look at your phone." I pulled it out. No signal, but the timestamp was clear. 17:32, 5:32 p.m. "I watched you," Colton said quietly. "You sat down on that rock at 3:47. I timed it because I wanted to see if the same thing would happen to you. You played the tape for exactly 90 seconds, then stopped. You looked at your watch, you looked at me, you asked, 'What?' And it was 5:30. 1 hour and 43 minutes had passed, but you experienced it as 2 minutes. I stood up from the rock, felt momentarily dizzy. The recorder was still in my hand, display still showing the recording in progress. I checked the timestamp on the file. It showed 5 hours and 27 minutes of continuous recording since I'd last started playback. "This isn't possible," I said again. And yet it happened. I walked away from the rock, away from the circle of depressions, put distance between myself and whatever that place was. My watch was still showing 3:49 p.m., frozen at that time, second hand stuck in place. I tapped it, shook it. Nothing changed. "We need to leave," Colton said. "Now. I need to document this, take photographs, soil samples, measurements. Agent Briggs, with respect, no you don't. What you need to do is exactly what I did. You need to walk away from this rock, get back to town, and write a report that says the investigation is ongoing but inconclusive." "I can't do that." "Yes, you can. Because whatever is happening out here, it's not something the Bureau can investigate. It's not something anyone can investigate." I looked back at the rock, at the circle, at the place where 6 people had sat, and then vanished. The recorder in my hand was still playing, still speaking that same sentence over and over, and for just a moment I could hear something underneath the words, something that sounded like breathing or wind or both. "I need more time," I said. "Time is exactly what you don't have out here," Colton said. "Or rather, time isn't what you think it is out here. Please, we should go." He was right, of course. Every instinct I had was screaming that this place was wrong, that something here operated outside normal physical laws, that staying any longer was dangerous in ways I didn't fully understand. But I'm an FBI agent. I don't walk away from crime scenes because they're strange. I don't abandon investigations because the evidence doesn't make sense. So instead of leaving, I did something monumentally stupid. I sat back down on the rock. "Agent Briggs, don't." I pressed play on the recorder. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." Colton was moving toward me, hand outstretched. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." I could see his mouth moving, but I couldn't hear what he was saying over the voice from the recorder. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." The sun was setting. Then it was overhead. Then it was setting again. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." Colton was standing 20 feet away. Then he was right next to me. Then he was gone. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't move. I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't work. "The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." The desert around me was flickering, changing, like someone was flipping through photographs of the same location at different times. Day, night, day, twilight, noon, midnight, dawn. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I could see shapes in the circle now, faint outlines sitting in chairs that weren't there. 6 shapes, motionless, facing inward. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. One of the shapes turned its head to look at me. I couldn't see its face, but I knew somehow that it was Marcus Holt, the man who ran the general store, one of the 6 missing persons. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I pressed stop. The recorder clicked off. The shapes vanished. The desert returned to normal, late afternoon sun casting long shadows, temperature dropping toward evening cool. Colton was kneeling next to me, hand on my shoulder. "Agent Briggs, can you hear me?" "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded wrong, too rough, like I'd been screaming. "Yeah, I can hear you. How long was I listening?" He looked at his watch, then at me. 90 seconds, same as last time, but your watch, he pointed. I looked, My watch showed 3:49 p.m., same as before, but the date had changed. It was now July 14th. "That's 3 days from now," I said, stupidly. "3 days from when we arrived, yes. Agent Briggs, I really think we need to leave. Right now." This time I didn't argue. I stood, stumbled slightly, let Colton guide me away from the rock and back toward where we'd left the Ranger. Behind us, I could hear the wind picking up. Or maybe it was something else, something that sounded like 6 voices all whispering the same sentence in perfect unison. We didn't talk on the walk back. We didn't talk during the drive to town. We didn't talk until we were back in the sheriff's substation with the door closed and locked, and the air conditioning blowing warm air that somehow felt safer than the desert outside. "I need to make some calls," I said finally. "To Phoenix?" "To Phoenix, to Quantico, to anyone who might have insight into what the hell just happened out there." Colton nodded, but his expression said he didn't think phone calls would help. He was probably right. I spent the next 4 hours on the phone, talking to supervisors, specialists, technical analysts, anyone who might have a framework for understanding what I'd experienced. Every conversation followed the same pattern: description of events, long silence, careful questions about my mental state, suggestions that perhaps the heat had affected my judgment, recommendations that I take a few days to rest before filing a formal report. No one believed me. Or, more accurately, no one wanted to believe me. At 11 p.m., I gave up on phone calls and started writing my preliminary report. I documented everything: the discovery of the 6 chairs, the recovery of the recorder, the voice on the tape, the time discrepancies, the shapes I'd seen. I attached photographs, GPS coordinates, witness statements from Colton. Then I read it over and realized it read like the ravings of someone having a psychotic break. I deleted it, started over. This time, I left out the time loss, the flickering desert, the shapes in the circle. I kept it simple: 6 disappearances. No bodies, no evidence of foul play. Investigation ongoing. Clean, professional, forgettable. I filed it at midnight and immediately felt like a coward. Colton was asleep on the cot in the corner, shotgun propped against the wall next to him. Through the window, I could see Persistence's main street, empty and quiet under a half moon. Somewhere out in the desert, 3 miles northeast, a recorder was still playing the same message over and over, speaking to an empty circle of compressed sand. I should have left then. Should have driven back to Phoenix, filed my sanitized report, and moved on to the next case. Should have followed Colton's father's advice and let the desert keep its secrets. But I've never been good at leaving questions unanswered. So, instead, I sat at that desk, staring at that map with its 6 red pins, and started planning my next move. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the darkness, I swore I could hear a voice speaking words that didn't belong to any clock I knew. I spent the next 3 days in Persistence trying to establish a coherent timeline. The problem with investigating disappearances in a place where time itself seems negotiable is that every interview, every piece of documentation, every sworn statement feels compromised before you even write it down. The motel room I rented was room 4 out of 8, positioned at the end of a building that looked like it had been constructed sometime in the 1950s and hadn't been updated since. The air conditioning unit rattled like it was trying to shake itself apart, managing to lower the temperature from uninhabitable to merely oppressive. The furniture was old but functional: a bed with a mattress that sagged in the middle, a table with cigarette burns around the edges, a chair that wobbled if you sat wrong, and a bathroom with rust stains that no amount of bleaching could remove. I spread my case files across the table, organized them by date and victim. Miguel Ortega had disappeared first, on June 1st. According to his employer at the gas station, Miguel had finished his shift at 6 p.m., mentioned he was going for a drive to cool off, and never came home. His truck was found 2 days later parked on the side of Route 87, keys in the ignition, wallet in the cup holder, half a tank of gas. No signs of struggle, no indications he'd been forced from the vehicle. The truck was just there, empty, like he'd simply stepped out and walked away. Sarah Danner was next, June 3rd. Elementary school teacher, 32 years old, lived alone in a small house on the western edge of town. Her sister reported her missing after Sarah failed to show up for their regular Tuesday dinner. When deputies checked Sarah's house, they found the front door unlocked, television on, dinner half prepared on the stove. Her car was in the driveway. Her purse was on the kitchen counter. Her phone was charging by the bed. Everything suggested she'd stepped out for just a moment and intended to return immediately. The Kowalskis, Rick and Linda, both 61, disappeared together on June 5th. They'd been staying at this very motel, room 7, passing through on their way to visit their daughter in New Mexico. The motel owner said they'd paid for 3 nights in advance but vanished after the first night. Their room was undisturbed except for the bed being slept in. Their luggage was still there. Linda's medication was still in the bathroom. The only thing missing was the couple themselves. Jamie Reeves, 19, June 7th. High school dropout with a reputation for being unreliable and a habit of disappearing for days at a time to party with friends in Phoenix. That should have made his disappearance less remarkable. Except his mother found his phone in his room with a text message typed but not sent. Something weird happening in the desert, going to check it out. The message was time-stamped 11:47 p.m. Jamie had never been known to go wandering in the desert at night. Marcus Holt, 54, June 9th. Owner of the general store, pillar of the community. The kind of man who everyone knew and generally liked, even if they didn't always agree with him. He'd closed up the store at his usual time, 7 p.m., told his wife he needed to run an errand, and drove off. His truck was found the next morning parked behind the general store, right where he'd have left it if he'd come back. But he hadn't come back, and his wife said when she'd asked him about the errand, he'd said something strange. "I need to make sure I'm there on time." There on time for what? She didn't know. He hadn't explained. I stared at the 6 files until my vision blurred. 6 people with nothing obviously connecting them except geography and timing. Different ages, different backgrounds, different personalities. Miguel had been quiet and religious. Sarah had been energetic and social. The Kowalskis had been just passing through. Jamie had been troubled and aimless. Marcus had been stable and community-oriented. No shared friends. No common enemies. No overlapping financial interests. No indication they'd even known each other beyond the casual acquaintance that comes from living in a small town. The only thread connecting them was that circle in the desert and those 6 folding chairs arranged with mathematical precision. I decided to start with the families. Get their stories directly, hear what they remembered about the days leading up to the disappearances. Look for patterns that might not be obvious in written reports. Miguel Ortega's widow, Rosa, lived in a small, manufactured home on the southern edge of town. She answered the door with the kind of exhausted wariness that comes from being asked the same questions too many times by too many officials. I showed her my credentials, explained I was reviewing the case, asked if she had time to talk. "The other police already asked everything," she said. Her English was accented but clear. "I don't know what else to tell you. I'm sorry to trouble you again, Mrs. Ortega. I know this is difficult. I just want to make sure we haven't missed anything." She studied me for a long moment, then stepped aside to let me in. The interior was modest but immaculate. Religious icons on the walls, photographs of children and grandchildren on every surface. She offered me water, which I accepted, and we sat at a small dining table positioned beneath a ceiling fan that turned slowly overhead. "Tell me about Miguel," I said. "What kind of person was he?" "Good man, quiet. He worked hard, took care of his family, never caused trouble." "In the days before he disappeared, did you notice anything unusual about his behavior? Any changes in routine, mood, anything at all?" She was quiet, thinking. "He was distracted. Last week before he disappeared, maybe 3-4 days. He would stop sometimes and just look at nothing. I would ask what's wrong. He would say nothing, but I could tell something was bothering him." "Did he say what?" "No, but I heard him talking on the phone one time. He was in the garage, thought I couldn't hear. He was telling someone about a dream he had." "A dream about what?" "He said he dreamed about sitting in the desert with strangers. He said in the dream they were all waiting for something, but he didn't know what. He said the dream felt real, more real than being awake." I wrote this down, felt something cold settle in my stomach. Did he say who he was talking to? I don't know. When I asked later, he said it was nobody, just someone from work. "Do you know if any of the other missing people had similar dreams?" "I don't know about the others, but at Miguel's funeral, Sarah Danner's sister mentioned Sarah had been having nightmares. Bad ones. That's all she said. I thanked Rosa, gave her my card, told her to call if she remembered anything else. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't expect anything to come from it. Too many investigators, too many questions, too few answers. I drove across town to speak with Linda Danner, Sarah's sister. She lived in a larger house near the school where Sarah had taught, a place with an actual lawn and trees, luxuries in this part of Arizona. She invited me in immediately, seemed almost grateful to have someone showing renewed interest in the case. "Everyone else has given up," she said, pouring coffee I didn't want but accepted out of politeness. "The county says they're still investigating, but I can tell they're just going through the motions. Sarah's been gone over a month, and I don't think anyone's actively looking for her anymore." "I'm looking," I said. "Can you tell me about the nightmares Sarah was having?" Linda paused, mid-pour, looked at me sharply. "How did you know about those?" "It came up in another interview. Can you describe them?" She finished pouring, sat down across from me. "Sarah called me about a week before she disappeared. She said she'd been having the same dream every night for 3 nights in a row. She dreamed she was sitting in a circle in the desert with people she didn't know. She said they were all very quiet, just sitting and waiting. She could see the sun moving across the sky, but it was moving wrong. Too fast or too slow, she couldn't tell which. And there was a voice saying something over and over, the same sentence, but she couldn't quite make out the words." The cold feeling in my stomach intensified. "Did she say anything else about the dream?" "She said it felt like a memory more than a dream, like she was remembering something that hadn't happened yet. I told her she was working too hard, needed to take some time off, but—" Linda's voice caught. "But then she vanished, and now I wonder if the dreams meant something." "Did she mention if anyone else was having similar dreams?" "She didn't say." "Why? Are others having them?" I didn't answer directly. "Did Sarah seem frightened by the dreams?" "No, that's what was strange. She said the dreams didn't scare her. They just made her feel like she needed to be somewhere at a specific time, but she didn't know where or when." I needed to be there on time. Marcus Holt's last words to his wife. I interviewed 4 more families that day and into the evening. Each conversation revealed variations on the same theme. In the days before disappearing, the victims had all experienced vivid dreams about sitting in a circle in the desert. Some had mentioned the dreams to family members, others had kept quiet about them. but the pattern was unmistakable. Jamie Reeves's mother said he'd woken up screaming 3 nights before he vanished, shouting something about how the son was wrong. The Kowalski's daughter said her father had called her the day before they disappeared, mentioned having the strangest dream about waiting in the desert with strangers, laughed it off as probably something he ate. Marcus Holt's wife said he'd started sleeping poorly about a week before. Would wake up in the middle of the night and sit on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. 6 people, 6 identical dreams, 6 disappearances. I returned to the motel around 9 p.m., exhausted and disturbed. The sun had finally set, dropping the temperature to something almost bearable, and the desert night was alive with small sounds: insects, distant coyotes, the whisper of wind through creosote bushes. Deputy Colton was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against my rental vehicle. "Find anything useful?" he asked. Maybe. They all had dreams. Same dream, more or less. About sitting in a circle in the desert waiting for something. He nodded slowly. I was afraid of that. Why? Because it means this isn't random. Whatever happened to them, they were selected somehow. Called. Called by what? I don't know, but I've been doing some research. Old newspapers, local history, anything I could find about previous disappearances in this area. I found something I think you should see. He pulled out a folder, opened it to reveal photocopied newspaper articles yellowed with age. The first was from the Persistence Observer, dated September 1987. The headline read, "4 locals still missing after 2 weeks." "Your father's case," I said. "Read the article." I scanned the text. 4 people had vanished over a 10-day period in September 1987. Different ages, different backgrounds. No obvious connections except geography. The disappearances had been investigated by local sheriff's deputies with assistance from state police. The investigation had eventually been closed due to lack of evidence. The 4 missing persons were presumed dead, but bodies were never recovered. "Sounds familiar," I said. "Keep reading. There's a follow-up article from 3 weeks later." The second article was shorter, buried on page 4. The headline, "Missing Persons Report Amended. Investigation Suspended." The text explained that new evidence had come to light suggesting the 4 missing persons had left the area voluntarily. The investigation was being suspended pending further developments. No details about what evidence had prompted this conclusion. "That's a bullshit closure," I said. "They're saying 4 people who had no connection to each other all decided to leave town at the same time without telling anyone." "Exactly. I found my father's personal notes from the case. He kept them in a storage unit, never threw anything away. The official story about voluntary departure was fabricated. He knew it, the county knew it. Everyone involved knew it. They closed the case because they couldn't solve it and didn't want to admit it." "What did your father's notes say?" Colton hesitated. "He found chairs. 6 folding chairs arranged in a circle in the desert, 3 miles northeast of town. Same location where we found the chairs last month." 6 chairs for 4 missing people? That's what his notes said. 6 chairs. But only 4 people had disappeared at that point. He photographed the scene, documented everything. Then, 2 days later, he went back to take more photographs and the chairs were gone. Just vanished. And something else happened. What? He lost time, same as we did. He wrote in his notes that he'd arrived at the location at 2 p.m. and left at 2:15. But when he got back to town, it was almost 6. His watch had stopped. His vehicle's clock had reset. He couldn't account for the missing hours. Did he report this? To his supervisor, yes. Who told him to close the file and move on. Said there was no point pursuing a case they couldn't solve and that dwelling on unexplainable elements would only make the department look incompetent. So he buried it. He did. But he told me about it before he died. He said the desert has its own rules and we're fools to think we understand them. He said there are places where time doesn't work right, where the normal laws break down, and that spot northeast of town is one of them. He said if I ever encountered anything similar, I should walk away and never look back. But you didn't walk away. No, because 6 more people have disappeared, and I have a responsibility to at least try to figure out what's happening, even if I can't stop it. I handed the folder back to him. I need to go back to that location, during the day, properly equipped, with witnesses and documentation. We need to establish exactly what's happening there. Agent Briggs, with respect, that's insane. You've already experienced time lost there once. Going back deliberately is asking for trouble. I'm aware of the risk. But this is now a serial disappearance case with at least 10 victims across 2 incidents 30-plus years apart. If there's a pattern, if there's something about that location that can be understood and documented, then I have an obligation to pursue it. Colton studied me for a long moment. You won't find anything that makes sense. That place doesn't want to be understood. Maybe not, but I have to try. He sighed, pushed off from the car. Fine, but we're doing this right. Multiple vehicles, multiple witnesses, limited exposure time, and a strict extraction protocol. If anything goes sideways, we leave immediately. Agreed? Agreed. Tomorrow morning, 0600, bring water, GPS, backup radio, and write a letter to your family explaining where you're going. If you vanish out there, at least they'll know what happened. You're a real optimist, Deputy. I'm a realist. This desert has already taken 10 people that we know of. There's no reason to think it won't take more. That night, I lay in bed in room 4, listening to the air conditioner rattle and watching shadows from passing headlights track across the ceiling. I thought about 6 people having the same dream, about chairs arranged in perfect circles, about a voice repeating the same sentence over and over into a recorder that shouldn't still be working. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. What the hell did that mean? I must have finally fallen asleep around 3 a.m., because I was startled awake by knocking on the door. I checked my watch, 5:47 a.m. Still dark outside, but the sky was starting to show that particular quality of pre-dawn gray that means night is ending whether you're ready or not. Colton was at the door with 2 other men I didn't recognize. Agent Briggs, this is Travis Mercer and Dale Bishop. They work for County Search and Rescue. I brought them in as additional witnesses and support staff. Both men were in their 40s, weathered and competent looking. The kind of people who knew how to handle themselves in harsh environments. We shook hands, exchanged minimal pleasantries, loaded into 2 vehicles. Colton and I took his Ranger. Mercer and Bishop followed in a county SAR truck equipped with enough emergency supplies to survive a month in the wilderness. The drive out to the location took the now familiar 40 minutes. The sun was rising as we arrived, turning the eastern sky into gradations of orange and pink that would have been beautiful if I wasn't so focused on what we were about to do. We parked both vehicles and distributed equipment. GPS units, 2-way radios, digital cameras, water, backup batteries, first aid kit. I also brought a portable atomic clock, the kind that syncs with the official time signal from NIST. If we experienced time loss again, I wanted an independent reference that couldn't be disputed. Everyone sync watches, Colton said. Current time is 06:43 and 30 seconds. Mark. We all checked. All 4 watches matched, as did both vehicle clocks and the atomic clock. Radio check, Mercer said, keying his handset. We all confirmed clear reception. Ground rules, Colton continued. We walk in together. We stay within visual contact of each other at all times. Time limit is 30 minutes. At 0713, we extract regardless of what we've found or haven't found. If anyone experiences dizziness, disorientation, or any other unusual symptoms, they call it out immediately and we all leave. No heroics, no pushing through. Understood? We all confirmed. One more thing, I said. I'm going to activate the recorder that we found. I want to see if there's any change in the time loss effect when it's playing versus when it's not. That seems unwise, Bishop said. Probably. But we need data, and that means taking calculated risks. Colton looked unhappy but nodded. Your call, Agent. Let's move out. We walked in formation, 2 by 2, following the GPS coordinates. The desert was quiet in that particular way it gets in early morning. Most of the nocturnal creatures bedded down, the daytime species not yet active. Our footsteps crunched on hardpack and gravel, the only sound for miles. After 15 minutes, we reached the location. The flat basalt rock was exactly as I'd left it 3 days ago, perfectly level, sitting alone in its circle of compressed sand. The 6 depressions where the chairs had been were still visible, undisturbed by wind or weather. Jesus, Mercer whispered. You didn't mention how wrong this place feels. He was right. There was something about this spot that made your hindbrain start screaming danger signals. Some quality to the air, or the light, or the way sound moved that registered as fundamentally incorrect. I could see Bishop shifting his weight, clearly uncomfortable, probably wanting to suggest we leave immediately. Cameras, I said. Document everything before we proceed. We spent 5 minutes photographing the site from every angle, taking measurements, recording GPS coordinates with multiple devices. The atomic clock showed 06:58:17 when we finished. Agent Briggs, Colton said quietly, look at your watch. I looked. It showed 06:58:17, exactly synchronized with the atomic clock. Now, look at the sun. I looked up. The sun was noticeably higher than it should have been. Based on the time, it should have been barely above the eastern horizon. Instead, it was at least 15 degrees up. The position it should be closer to 7:30 or 8 a.m. Check GPS elevation data, I said. Bishop pulled out his GPS unit, cycled through screens. Current elevation 2,007 feet, same as when we parked. Sun position. Mercer had a smartphone with a sky mapping app. According to this, the sun should be at 12 degrees elevation. Actual position is approximately 26 degrees. That's impossible, Bishop said. And yet, I said. I pulled the evidence bag with the recorder from my pack, opened the seal, took the device out. It was still recording, still showing half battery, same as it had been for over a week now. Everyone note the time before I press play. Call it out. 6:59 and 45 seconds, Colton said. Confirmed, Mercer and Bishop said in unison. I pressed play. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. The voice was louder here, clearer, like it was being broadcast through speakers we couldn't see. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. The sun moved, not jumped, not flickered, moved, smoothly, visibly, noticeably. It arced from its position at 26 degrees to approximately 45 degrees in what felt like 3 seconds. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Colton, Mercer said, his voice tight. What's happening? Everyone, stay calm, Colton said, but his voice betrayed his own lack of calm. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I looked at my watch. Still showed 06:59:45. Hadn't advanced. The atomic clock showed 07:03:29. 4 minutes had passed on one timepiece, 0 minutes on another. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Bishop was backing away. We need to leave. Now. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I saw them then, the same shapes I'd seen before. 6 outlines sitting in chairs that weren't there, arranged in their perfect circle around the rock. Faint at first, like heat shimmer, then gradually more solid. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Agent Briggs, do you see that? Colton asked. I see it. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. The shapes were more defined now. I could make out features, clothing, posture. 6 people sitting quietly, facing inward, hands in their laps. 3 men, 2 women, and 1 figure I couldn't quite resolve into either category. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. One of the shapes turned its head to look at me. It was Marcus Holt. I recognized him from photographs in the case file. His expression was calm, almost peaceful, like he was waiting for something he knew was coming. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I pressed stop. The recorder clicked off. The shapes faded but didn't vanish completely, hanging in the air like after images. The sun resumed its normal progression, though it was now positioned much higher than it should have been. My watch started ticking again, but when I checked it against the atomic clock, there was a discrepancy of 17 minutes. Time check, I said. My watch says 07:17, Colton said. But that can't be right. We've only been here 20 minutes. Atomic clock says 07:32, Mercer reported. Vehicle clock says 08:04, Bishop added, reading from his radio display. 4 different time sources, 4 different times. The only thing we could be certain of was that more time had passed than we'd experienced, and whatever was happening at this location had a direct and measurable effect on temporal progression. We need to document this immediately, I said. Take photographs of all time sources, record statements, collect any physical evidence. Agent Briggs, Colton interrupted. Look. He was pointing at the sand around the rock. Where the 6 depressions had been, there were now 7. A new depression had appeared, directly between where 2 of the others had been, perfectly sized and shaped to accommodate a folding chair. That wasn't there before, Mercer said unnecessarily. No, I agreed. It wasn't. We stood there in silence, staring at the 7 depressions, at the rock, at the place where 6 ghostly figures had sat moments before. The implications were clear and deeply disturbing. The circle was expanding. Whatever process had claimed 6 people was preparing to claim a 7th. We're leaving, Colton said, right now. This time, no one argued. We gathered our equipment, took a few last photographs, and retreated to the vehicles. The walk back felt longer than the walk in, like the desert was reluctant to let us go. By the time we reached the trucks, we were all breathing harder than the exertion warranted. Vehicle clocks, I said. Colton checked his. 08:37. Bishop checked the Sayar truck. 9:15. Neither time matched what our watches showed or what the atomic clock indicated. We'd experienced roughly 35 minutes of subjective time, but the vehicles were reporting anywhere from 55 minutes to 93 minutes had passed. This is impossible, Bishop said again, but with less conviction this time. We need to get this evidence to specialists, I said. Physics experts, temporal mechanics researchers, anyone who might be able to explain what's happening. Agent Briggs, Mercer said carefully. "With respect, I don't think this is a physics problem." "Then what is it?" He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "My grandfather was Navajo. He used to tell stories about places in the desert where time doesn't work right, where the normal world overlaps with something else. He called them thin places. Said you should never linger in them because the longer you stay, the harder it is to leave. You think this is a thin place? I think, whatever this is, it's not something science is equipped to handle." We drove back to Persistence in silence. When we arrived at the sheriff's substation, it was 10:47 a.m. according to the wall clock, 09:23 according to my watch, and 11:05 according to the atomic clock. Time itself had fragmented, each device reporting a different reality. I spent the rest of the day writing reports that I knew would be dismissed as either equipment malfunction or observer error. I attached photographs, witness statements, GPS logs, anything that might lend credibility to what we'd experienced. It didn't matter. The evidence was too strange, too far outside normal parameters. No one would believe it. That night, I dreamed about the circle. 6 figures sitting quietly, faces indistinct, waiting for something that never came. In the dream, I could hear the voice from the recorder, speaking its endless message, but underneath it was another sound, breathing, or wind, or both. When I woke, it was 3:47 a.m., the same time my watch had frozen it during my first visit to the rock. I looked at my phone, checked the time. 3:47 a.m. I got up, looked out the motel window at the empty street. The half-moon cast long shadows. Nothing moved. Everything was quiet. Except somewhere in the distance I could hear something. A voice, faint but distinct, speaking words I couldn't quite make out. I knew I should ignore it. Knew I should go back to bed, file my report in the morning, and request reassignment to literally any other case. But I'm an FBI agent, and that voice was evidence. So I got dressed, grabbed my equipment, and drove back into the desert alone. It was the stupidest decision of my life. The desert at night is a different place than the desert during the day. The temperature drops 40 degrees. The sounds change. Things that hide from the sun come out to hunt, and without the visual reference of horizon and sky, distance becomes meaningless. You could be driving towards something a mile away or 10 miles away and have no way to know until you arrived. I followed the GPS coordinates, driving slowly on roads that weren't really roads anymore. My headlights carved a tunnel through the darkness, illuminating creosote bushes and rock formations that all looked identical. The dashboard clock read 4:23. My watch read 3:47. The time on my phone kept flickering between different values, never settling on one for more than a few seconds. I knew this was monumentally stupid. Going back to that location alone, at night, after experiencing temporal displacement twice already. If I disappeared now, no one would know what happened. Colton might guess, but guessing wasn't the same as knowing. I'd simply become the 7th depression in the sand, another missing person file to be closed and forgotten. But I had to know, had to understand what was happening at that location, what those 6 people had experienced before they vanished. The voice I'd heard from the motel room was calling me, pulling me toward something I couldn't name. After 30 minutes, I reached the location where we'd parked that morning. I killed the engine, sat in the sudden silence. Outside, the moon provided enough light to see maybe 20 feet in any direction. Beyond that was pure darkness, deep and complete. I checked my equipment. Flashlight, GPS, radio, water, first aid kit. Phone, fully charged, even though the clock was still flickering. Camera with fresh batteries. The recorder I'd taken from evidence. Still showing half battery. Still recording its endless message. I should have brought backup, should have waited until morning, should have requested support from specialists who might actually know what they were dealing with. Instead, I opened the door and stepped out into the desert night. The temperature was actually pleasant, maybe 65 degrees, cool after the day's heat. The air smelled of dust and creosote and something else, something I couldn't identify. Ozone maybe, or electricity, or nothing at all. I started walking northeast following the GPS. The beam of my flashlight created a small bubble of visibility in the surrounding darkness. Every few steps I'd stop and listen. The desert was quiet but not silent. Small sounds, wind through rocks, distant coyote songs, the whisper of sand moving across sand. And underneath it all, that voice. Still faint, still indistinct, but definitely there. Speaking the same sentence over and over. After 15 minutes I saw it. The flat basalt rock, visible in the moonlight, darker than the surrounding sand. The 7 depressions arranged around it in their perfect circle. And sitting in one of those depressions, facing inward, was a folding chair. I stopped walking. The chair hadn't been there that morning, I was certain of it. We'd photographed the site extensively, documented every detail. There had been 7 empty depressions, and no chairs. Now, there was one chair. I approached slowly, flashlight beam sweeping across the scene. The chair was exactly like the ones that had been found 3 days before. Cheap metal frame, green canvas seat, the kind you could buy at any hardware store. It sat in the depression closest to my approach vector, positioned precisely in the center of the compressed sand, facing the rock. I circled around, checking the other 6 depressions. All empty. Just the one chair I should have left. Should have radioed Colton, called for backup, established a perimeter and brought in a full investigative team. Standard procedure for anything this anomalous. But that voice was louder now, clearer. I could almost make out the words. And the chair was empty, waiting, positioned as if someone had placed it there specifically for me. I sat down. The chair was surprisingly comfortable. The compressed sand beneath it felt solid, stable. I was facing the rock, maybe 6 feet away, the moon casting my shadow across its dark surface. I pulled out the recorder, checked the display. Still recording. I placed it on the rock, centered it carefully, pressed play. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. The voice was much louder now, clear and distinct. Middle-aged male, no particular accent, speaking with absolute certainty. I could hear details I'd missed before, the slight pause between intention and, the emphasis on measured, the way clocks was pronounced with a hard K sound. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. The moon flickered, or maybe my vision flickered. One moment it was there, bright and clear. Next moment it was slightly lower in the sky. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I looked at my watch. 3:47. Looked at the GPS. Timestamp. 04:52. Looked at the phone. The display showed 3:14. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. 5 shapes materialized in 5 of the other depressions. Not slowly, not gradually. They were simply there, as if they'd always been there, and I was only now able to see them. 3 men, 2 women, sitting quietly, hands folded in their laps, faces calm. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I recognize them now. Miguel Ortega in the depression to my right. Sarah Danner directly across from me. Rick and Linda Kowalski side by side to my left. Marcus Holt next to them. Jamie Reeves should have been in the remaining empty depression, but that space was vacant. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. "Where's Jamie?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, muffled, like I was speaking through cotton. Marcus Holt turned his head to look at me. His expression was peaceful, almost serene. When he spoke, his voice had that same quality as the recorded message, clear and certain. "He couldn't wait," Marcus said. "Some of us can wait longer than others. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." Wait for what? For the crossing to complete, for the hours to align, for the intention to match the destination. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Sarah Danner spoke next, her voice soft. "You shouldn't be here. You're not ready." Ready for what? To wait, to listen, to understand that some hours don't belong to clocks. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't respond. I was sitting in the chair, facing the rock, and that was where I was going to stay. Panic started to build in my chest. "Let me go," I said. "We can't," Miguel said quietly. "We're not the ones holding you." The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. The sun was rising. Fast-forward sunrise compressed into seconds. The moon vanished, the sky lightened, the stars disappeared. Day arrived in a rush of gold and white. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Then it was night again. Full darkness, moon back in position. The transition took maybe 3 seconds. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Day, night, day, night. The cycle repeating faster and faster, time compressing and expanding like an accordion. My watch was spinning, hands blurring. The GPS display was scrolling through timestamps too quickly to read. My phone had frozen, display showing only static. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. "How do I stop this?" I asked. "You don't," Linda Kowalski said gently. "You wait until the hours align, until intention meets destination, until you've waited long enough to leave." How long is that? Different for everyone. Jamie only waited 3 hours. He couldn't hold on longer. Marcus has been here 6 weeks. The rest of us are somewhere in between. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. 6 weeks? But you've only been gone a month. "Time doesn't work the same here," Rick Kowalski said. "Inside the circle and outside the circle are different. Inside, we experience days and weeks. Outside, hours pass. The ratio isn't consistent. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks." The day-night cycle was slowing now, settling into a rhythm. Day for what felt like an hour. Night for the same. Then again, and again. "What happens after you wait long enough?" I asked. No one answered. They just sat there, calm and patient, hands in their laps, facing the rock. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I tried the radio, pressed transmit, called for Colton. Nothing but static. Tried my phone. No signal, display still frozen. Tried to stand again, still paralyzed from the waist down. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. "Please," I said, "tell me what happens." Sarah leaned forward slightly. We cross, from intention to destination, from inside to outside, from hours that don't belong to clocks to hours that do. Cross to where? We don't know, but it's where we're supposed to be, where we were always going to end up. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Day became night became day became night. The cycle was almost soothing now, predictable, a metronome marking time that had no meaning. My panic was fading, replaced by a strange calm. Maybe this wasn't so bad. Maybe I could just sit here and wait, however long it took, and eventually I'd cross to wherever they were going. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. No, that wasn't right. That was the waiting talking, the circle's influence, the hours that didn't belong to clocks trying to make me accept this as normal. I was FBI Special Agent Nathan Briggs. I had a family, a job, a life outside this circle. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't one of the 6 who had dreamed about this place, who'd been called here by whatever force operated in this thin place. I was here by choice, which meant I could leave by choice. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I focused on the recorder, sitting on the rock, still playing its endless message. The voice wasn't coming from the recorder. The recorder was receiving it, capturing it, but the source was somewhere else, somewhere in the desert or underneath it, or in between the hours that didn't align. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I reached for the recorder. My arm moved, slowly, like pushing through water. My fingers touched the plastic casing. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Don't, Marcus said quietly. If you stop it now, you'll be trapped halfway between, neither here nor there. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I'll take my chances. I pressed stop. Everything froze. Day-night cycle stopped mid-transition. The sky an impossible mixture of dawn and dusk simultaneously. The 5 figures frozen in their positions, mouths open mid-word. The wind stopped. Sound stopped. Even my own breathing stopped, or seemed to, though I could still feel my chest moving. The only thing still active was my mind, racing through the implications. I'd stopped the playback, but the effect hadn't ended. I was caught between states, between the normal world and whatever this place was, unable to fully exist in either. I pressed play. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Everything resumed. The figures relaxed. The day-night cycle continued. Sound returned. We tried to warn you, Sarah said sadly. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I needed a different approach. The recorder wasn't controlling this place, it was just documenting it. Stopping the playback didn't break the effect, it just suspended me in stasis. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. What had Colton's father said? There are some things the desert keeps, and we should let it keep them. But I wasn't one of those things. I didn't belong here. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I thought about the 7th depression, the empty space where no chair sat. I'd sat in someone else's chair, taken someone else's position in the circle. But that 7th space was mine, or would be mine, if I stayed. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. What if I moved? Not tried to leave the circle entirely, but shifted to the space that was meant for me. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I concentrated on standing, pushed against the paralysis, willed my legs to work. Nothing happened. I was bound to this chair, this position, trapped by whatever force operated here. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. But I'd arrived by choice. I'd sat in this chair voluntarily, which meant I stood. It wasn't easy. It felt like pushing against a physical weight, a resistance that increased with every inch I gained. But I stood, one leg, then the other, feet planted in the compressed sand, standing in the circle, facing the rock. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. The 5 figures turned to look at me, expressions showing surprise for the first time. "That's not possible," Miguel said. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I took a step backward, away from the rock, toward the edge of the circle. The resistance increased, felt like walking through cement that was slowly hardening. But I took another step, then another. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. "You're breaking the pattern," Marcus said, voice strained. "If you leave before the waiting is complete, you'll damage the crossing." "Good," I said, and took another step. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. The day-night cycle was accelerating again, faster and faster, becoming a strobe effect of light and dark. The 5 figures were flickering, becoming translucent, their calm expressions replaced by something that might have been fear. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. One more step. The edge of the circle was right there, maybe 2 feet away. I could see the boundary clearly now, a visible line where the compressed sand met the normal desert. Cross that line, and I'd be free. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I reached for my pocket, pulled out my FBI credentials, opened the wallet, let it fall into the circle. Proof that I'd been here. Evidence that couldn't be disputed. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Then I stepped across the line. The transition was immediate and violent. The day-night cycle vanished, replaced by stable darkness. The 5 figures disappeared. The rock became just a rock. The recorder fell silent mid-sentence. I collapsed onto normal sand, gasping, heart hammering. My watch showed 3:47. My phone showed 06:15. The GPS showed 09:33. I lay there for what felt like hours but was probably minutes, waiting for my body to remember how to function normally. Eventually, I managed to sit up, take stock. All my equipment was still functioning. I was still alive. I'd escaped. When I finally stood and looked back at the circle, I could see my credentials lying in the center of the compressed sand, next to the rock. And sitting in the chair I'd vacated was a figure. Faint, barely visible, but definitely there. It looked like me. I didn't go back for my credentials. I walked to my vehicle, drove back to Persistence, went directly to the motel. It was 7:23 a.m. according to the lobby clock. I'd been gone approximately 3 hours normal time, but I'd experienced what felt like at least 8 or 9 hours in the circle. Colton was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against my room's door. He took one look at me and his expression hardened. "You went back?" "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." "You goddamn idiot." "Probably." He studied me for a long moment. "You got out. How?" "I'm not sure. Force of will? Wrong chair? Dumb luck? Maybe all 3. Where's your credentials?" "Still there, in the circle. Evidence." Evidence of what? That I was there, that this happened, that whatever that place is, it's real and dangerous and needs to be documented. Colton shook his head. Agent Briggs, the Bureau is going to close this case. They're going to call it unsolvable, file it away and move on. Your credentials being in that circle won't change anything. Maybe, but at least there will be proof. He didn't argue. We stood there in the parking lot as the sun climbed higher, burning away the coolness of night, preparing for another day of punishing heat. I'm putting in for a transfer, Colton said finally. Somewhere far from here, somewhere flat and boring where time works normally. Can't say I blame you. What about you? I'm going to file my report, include everything. Let the Bureau decide what to do with it. They won't believe you. I know. They'll probably recommend psychological evaluation. Probably. Was it worth it? Risking your career, your credibility, your life? I thought about the 5 figures sitting in their circle, waiting patiently for the hours to align. Thought about my own figure sitting in that chair, trapped or free or something in between. Thought about the voice still speaking its endless message to an empty desert. Ask me again in a year, I said. I spent the rest of that day writing my report. Every detail, every observation, every impossible thing I'd witnessed. I attached photographs, Jeep logs, witness statements. I documented the time discrepancies, the temporal displacement, the figures in the circle. I filed it at midnight and immediately received an automated response requesting a psychological evaluation before proceeding with the investigation. I declined the evaluation and requested reassignment. 3 days later, I was transferred to the White-Collar Crime Division in Sacramento. Clean, simple, comprehensible cases involving fraud and embezzlement. Nothing that required questioning the nature of time or reality. The official file on the persistence disappearances was closed 6 weeks later. Status: insufficient evidence to proceed. Recommendation: case suspended pending new leads. No new leads ever came. 17 months later, I received a package at my Sacramento office. No return address, postmarked from Persistence, Arizona. Inside was my FBI credentials wallet, the one I'd left in the circle, along with a handwritten note on Sheriff's Department letterhead. Agent Briggs, found this at the location you investigated last year. Thought you'd want it back. The circle is empty now. All 7 depressions are gone. The rock is still there, but there's nothing unusual about it anymore. Whatever was happening, it seems to have stopped, or finished, or moved on. I don't know which. Deputy Marshal C. I opened the credentials wallet. Everything was intact. My ID card, my badge, my business cards. But there was something else tucked in behind the ID card. A small piece of paper, folded once, with writing I didn't recognize. I unfolded it. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. You understand this now. The others crossed. You didn't. You're still waiting. You just don't know it yet. Check your watch. I looked at my watch. It showed 3:47 a.m. But it was 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in Sacramento, bright sunlight coming through my office window. People walking past in the hallway outside. I tapped the watch face. The second hand was frozen, stuck between the 9 and the 10, not moving. I checked my computer clock. 2:15 p.m. Checked my phone. 2:15 p.m. Checked the wall clock. 2:15 p.m. Only my watch disagreed. Only my watch remained trapped at 3:47 a.m. I pulled out my phone, searched for the Sheriff's Department in Persistence. Found a number, called it. After 4 rings, it went to voicemail. Deputy Marshal Colton's voice, professional and impersonal. You've reached the Persistence Sheriff's substation. We're unable to take your call. Please leave a message and we'll return your call as soon as possible. I left a message. Asked about the package, asked about the circle, asked if anything else unusual had been observed at that location. Gave my number. No one called back. I tried again the next day. Same voicemail. Left another message. Still no response. On the third day, I called the county sheriff's main office in Phoenix, asked to be transferred to the Persistence substation. The operator was quiet for a moment, then said, "Sir, the Persistence substation was closed 4 months ago. There's no one stationed there anymore." Closed? Why? Population decrease. The town's essentially abandoned now. Last census showed fewer than 50 residents. Not enough to justify maintaining a sheriff's presence. What about Deputy Marshal Colton? Where was he transferred? One moment, please. Computer keys clicking. I don't show any record of a Deputy Marshal Colton in our system. Are you sure that's the right name? Positive. He was the deputy in Persistence when I investigated a missing persons case there last year. Sir, according to our records, there hasn't been a deputy assigned to Persistence in 3 years. The last one was Deputy Marshal Briggs, who retired and I hung up. Briggs. My name. There'd been a deputy with my name stationed in Persistence before I arrived. That wasn't possible. I was the only Nathan Briggs in the bureau. I'd checked when I first joined because I was curious if there were others. I pulled up the FBI personnel database, searched for my own name. One result: Special Agent Nathan Briggs, currently assigned to White Collar Crime, Sacramento office. I searched for Deputy Marshal Colton. No results. I searched for Deputy Marshal Briggs. No results. I searched for Persistence, Arizona Missing Persons Investigations. The file I'd worked came up, along with 2 others. One from 1987, 4 missing persons, case closed unsolved. One from 1954, 3 missing persons, case closed unsolved. I opened the 1954 file. The investigating officer was listed as FBI Special Agent Nathan Briggs. My hands were shaking. That wasn't possible. I was born in 1978. I couldn't have investigated a case in 1954. But there was my name, clear as day, in official FBI documentation. Same name, same title, investigating missing persons in Persistence, Arizona, 70 years before I'd arrived there. I opened the scanned documents. Found a photo of the investigating agent standing next to a sheriff's deputy. The photo was grainy, black and white, low resolution. But the agent's face was familiar. It was me, or someone who looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same facial features. Wearing a suit that was accurate for the 1950s, standing next to a vehicle that was accurate for the 1950s, but unmistakably me. I closed the file. Opened the 1987 file. Investigating Officer, Deputy Marshal Nathan Briggs. Another photo. Color this time, better resolution. A deputy standing in front of the Persistence substation. It was me, 37 years before I'd first arrived in Persistence. I checked my watch. Still frozen at 3:47 a.m. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I'd discovered. 3 investigations separated by decades. 3 different officers with my name and face, all investigating disappearances in Persistence, Arizona. All connected to the same location, the same circle in the desert, the same impossible phenomena. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. At 3:47 a.m., my phone rang. I checked the caller ID. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Static. Underneath it, faintly, a voice. My voice. You're still waiting, you just don't know it yet. Who is this? You already know. You've always known. From the moment you sat in that chair. That's not possible. I left. I got out. Did you? Check your calendar. I pulled up my phone's calendar app. Today was Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. Except according to my last memory of going to work, yesterday had been Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. The date hadn't changed. I scrolled back. Every day for the last week showed the same date, November 19th, 2024. Before that, different dates, normal progression. But starting a week ago, time had stopped advancing. Or I'd stopped advancing through time. Or I was caught in a loop I hadn't noticed because the days themselves were different enough to mask the repetition. That's not possible, I said again, but my voice lacked conviction. Time doesn't work the same here. Inside the circle and outside the circle are different. You left the physical location, but you're still inside, still waiting, still trying to cross from intention to destination. How do I get out? You don't. You wait until the hours align, until you've been wherever you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Then you cross. Cross to where? You'll understand when it happens. They all did. Miguel, Sarah, the Kowalskis, Marcus, even Jamie, though he didn't wait as long. They all crossed, and you will too. How long? For you, hard to say. You're stubborn, you resist. That makes the waiting longer, but eventually everyone crosses. In 1954, you'll cross. In 1987, you'll cross. In 2024, you'll cross. Different iterations of the same wait, the same circle, the same inevitable destination. The call disconnected. I sat there in the darkness, phone in hand, my watch showing 3:47 a.m., trying to determine if I was still in my Sacramento apartment or if I'd never left the desert at all. Over the following weeks, or what I experienced as weeks, though the calendar insisted it was still November 19th, I tried everything. I went to the doctor to confirm I was physically present and intact. I called friends and family to verify they could see and interact with me. I went to work, completed cases, attended meetings. Everything seemed normal, except my watch never advanced past 3:47 a.m., and the calendar never moved past November 19th. And occasionally I'd catch a reflection in a window or mirror and see not my current face but an older version or a younger version, and I couldn't tell which was real. I tried returning to persistence, drove there on what I thought was a Saturday, arrived to find the town almost completely abandoned. The motel was closed, windows boarded. The sheriff's substation was locked, a foreclosure notice on the door. The general store was empty, shelves bare. The only sign of life was a single pickup truck parked outside the gas station. But when I approached, the station was closed and the truck was covered in dust like it hadn't been driven in months. I walked to the spot where Colton and I had first met, where he'd told me about the tape. Stood there for an hour, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did, just desert and sun and silence. I drove out to the location of the circle. It took 3 tries to find it because my GPS kept leading me to different coordinates, never quite the right ones. When I finally found the correct spot, the circle was gone. Just normal desert, no compressed sand, no basalt rock, no depressions where chairs had been. But when I stood there, in the place where the circle had been, I could feel something. A coldness that had nothing to do with temperature. A sense of patient waiting, of hours accumulating in ways that didn't belong to clocks. I sat down in the sand where I thought my chair had been, closed my eyes, listened. Faint, distant, barely audible, I could hear it. That voice, still speaking its endless message. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I opened my eyes. The desert was empty, but I knew somewhere, somewhen, the circle was still there. The chairs were still there. The 5 figures were still waiting. And somewhere, somewhen, I was still sitting among them. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I drove back to Sacramento, went to work on Monday, which was also November 19th, attended a meeting about a securities fraud case, had lunch with a colleague, wrote reports, everything normal. That night, I had a dream. I was back in the circle, sitting in my chair, facing the rock. The recorder was playing. The 5 figures sat around me, calm and patient. But now there were 6 other figures too, translucent and flickering, occupying the same space as the first 5. And 6 more beyond them, and 6 more beyond those, layer upon layer of missing persons, all sitting in the same circle, all waiting for the hours to align, all trying to cross from intention to destination. In the dream, I understood. The circle wasn't just one place at one time. It was every time simultaneously. Every investigation, every disappearance, every agent or deputy or investigator who tried to understand what was happening there. All of us caught in the same loop, the same wait, the same impossible interval between seconds. We were all the same person. Nathan Briggs in 1954, investigating 3 missing persons and getting caught in the circle. Nathan Briggs in 1987, investigating 4 missing persons and getting caught in the circle. Nathan Colton, because Colton was just another iteration, another name for the same person, investigating 6 missing persons and getting caught in the circle. All of us trying to solve the same case, all of us becoming part of the case, all of us waiting for the same crossing that might never come. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I woke up at 3:47 a.m. My watch showed 3:47 a.m. My phone showed November 19th, 2024. Outside my apartment window, Sacramento looked normal. Cars passing, streetlights glowing. The ordinary world proceeding as ordinary worlds do. I checked my work email. 3 messages from my supervisor about the securities fraud case. All time-stamped November 19th. 47 messages from automated systems, all time-stamped November 19th. 1 message from an unknown sender, no timestamp at all. Subject line, persistence investigation. No message body, just an attachment. Audio file, 0:43 seconds long. I downloaded it, pressed play. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. My voice, speaking words I'd never said, in a recording I'd never made, sent from an address that didn't exist. I deleted the email, deleted the audio file, shut down my computer. It didn't matter. At 3:47 a.m. every night, my phone would ring. Unknown number. Static, and underneath it my voice speaking that same sentence. Every morning I'd wake up on November 19th. Every day I'd go to work, live my life, pretend everything was normal. But my watch never advanced. The calendar never changed. And in the desert, 3 miles northeast of a town that was slowly being reclaimed by sand, a circle waited. Sometimes on my drive home from work, always Tuesday, always November 19th, I'd take a detour. Head east instead of north. Follow highways that led toward Arizona. I never made it far. Something always called me back. A phone call from work, an urgent email, a sudden flat tire. The universe conspiring to keep me in Sacramento, keep me in November 19th, keep me waiting. Because that's what I was doing, waiting. The same way Miguel and Sarah and the Kowalskis and Marcus had waited. The same way Jamie had waited, though not long enough. The same way I'd waited in 1954 and in 1987 and would wait again in whatever iteration came next. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I finally understood what that meant. It meant I'd had an intention when I drove to that circle. To solve the case, to understand what was happening, to document the impossible. And I had a destination, wherever I was supposed to be when the case was finally solved, when all the hours aligned, when intention and destination finally matched. But the space between those 2 points wasn't measured in normal time. It was measured in hours that existed outside the flow of clocks and calendars, hours that accumulated in ways that defied linear progression. I could spend subjective years in that space, and only seconds would pass in the normal world. Or I could spend seconds in that space and have years pass outside it. The tape was still recording. Not just the physical recorder I'd left in the desert, but some other recorder, some cosmic documentation of everyone who'd ever sat in that circle. It had been recording for decades, or centuries, or maybe since time itself began. And it would keep recording long after I crossed, or didn't cross, or gave up waiting. 3 months after receiving the package, or 3 repetitions of November 19th, I'd lost the ability to tell the difference. I stopped trying to resist. Stopped pretending I could escape. Stopped filing reports and making calls and investigating leads that went nowhere. Instead, I did my work during the day, clean and professional and unremarkable. And at night, at 3:47 a.m., when my phone rang with that unknown number, I'd answer. "I'm still here," I'd say. "I know," my voice would respond. "We all are. How much longer?" Until the hours align. Until your iteration completes its wait. Until someone else sits in that chair and starts their own wait. And then you cross. From intention to destination. From inside to outside. From hours that don't belong to clocks to whatever comes after. What comes after? Static. Just static. The question had no answer. Or the answer existed in a space I couldn't access yet. I stopped asking. Now I just wait. I go to work on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. I come home on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. I sleep and wake on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. My watch shows 3:47 a.m. My phone rings with unknown numbers. In the desert, 3 miles northeast of Persistence, Arizona, a circle that isn't there waits patiently for its next visitor. Sometimes I think about the others. Miguel and Sarah and the Kowalskis and Marcus and Jamie. I wonder if they completed their crossings. I wonder if they found whatever destination matched their intentions. I wonder if they remember the circle, or if the crossing erased those memories, leaving them in some other place with some other life, unaware they'd ever been lost. I wonder if I'll remember when my turn comes. I wonder if my turn will ever come. I wonder if I'm still sitting in that chair, in that circle, experiencing Sacramento and November 19th, and this entire life as a hallucination generated during the seconds between sitting down and crossing over. I wonder if there's any difference between being trapped in the circle and being trapped in the memory of the circle. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. Last night, or this morning, or one of the infinite iterations of 3:47 a.m. on November 19th, 2024, I drove to the office, filed my final report on the Persistence disappearances, detailed every impossibility, every time distortion, every unexplainable element. attached every piece of evidence I'd collected. Then I marked the case status as closed, agent reassigned. Because that's what happened. I was reassigned. From normal time to abnormal time. From hours that belong to clocks to hours that don't. From investigating the circle to being part of it. The report will sit in the FBI database forever. Or until the database is deleted, or until someone else investigates disappearances in persistence and finds my name attached to files from 1954 and 1907 and 2024 and wonders how that's possible. Maybe they'll go to the circle. Maybe they'll sit in the chair. Maybe they'll wait for the hours to align. Maybe we'll wait together. Separated by decades but occupying the same impossible interval. All of us trying to cross from intention to destination. Or maybe I'll cross before then. Maybe tomorrow, or the next November 19th, or the 10,000th November 19th, I'll wake up at 3:47 a.m. and my watch will finally advance. The calendar will change. The phone won't ring. And I'll know the wait is over. Until then, I do my work. I live my life. I answer my phone at 3:47 a.m. and listen to my own voice tell me I'm still waiting. The distance between intention and destination is measured in hours that do not belong to clocks. I understand that now. I understand it perfectly. And every night, when my phone rings at 3:47 a.m., I answer. I'm still here. I know. We all are. And somewhere in the desert, a tape recorder that shouldn't still be working continues to record its endless message into the darkness, documenting hours that don't belong to clocks, marking the space between intention and destination, waiting patiently for the next agent to sit down and try to understand. The recording never stops. The circle never closes. The wait never ends. The GPS unit gave me coordinates that shouldn't exist. I've been with the Bureau 14 years, worked border security operations for 7 of those, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that 31.3347 Digan, 109.1823 to Goldabo places you in empty desert 40 miles south of Douglas, Arizona. There's nothing there. No settlements, no structures, no reason for anyone to be in that particular square of sand and rock. But the GPS insisted otherwise, and when a missing persons case generates anomalous data, you follow it, even when every instinct says the data is corrupted. My name is Special Agent Rebecca Holt. I work out of the Tucson field office, specializing in cases involving the Arizona-Mexico border region. Human trafficking, drug interdiction, organized crime, the occasional murder that crosses jurisdictional lines. I've seen plenty of strange things in 7 years of border work, but nothing prepared me for what I found at mile marker 98. The case file landed on my desk on a Wednesday in September. Local rancher named Tom Avery had reported his ranch hand missing after the man failed to return from checking fence lines along the southern property boundary. The ranch hand, Paul Ramsey, 41 years old, had taken a utility vehicle and two-way radio, standard procedure for that kind of work. He'd checked in twice via radio during the morning, reporting nothing unusual. Then silence. When Ramsey didn't return by evening, Avery drove out to look for him. Found the utility vehicle parked near the fence line, driver's door open, radio on the seat. No signs of struggle, no blood, no indication of what had happened. The fence itself was intact. Ramsey's water bottle was still half full. His tools were organized neatly in the vehicle's bed. Everything suggested he'd simply stepped away for a moment and never came back. That alone wouldn't have warranted FBI involvement. People disappear in the desert all the time, usually due to disorientation, dehydration, or misadventure. The Border Patrol and County Sheriff handle most of these cases, and they're generally resolved within 48 hours, one way or another. What made this case different was the GPS data. Ramsey had been carrying a personal GPS tracker, one of those emergency beacon devices that hikers and outdoorsmen use. The device transmitted his location every 15 minutes to a satellite service. According to the data log, Ramsey's last transmission came from those coordinates I mentioned, 31:33:57 Dignain, 109.1 degrees. The problem was that those coordinates were 15 miles south of where his vehicle was found. 15 miles deeper into the desert, well past the border, in an area where no roads existed and no one had any legitimate reason to be. Border Patrol suggested he might have been meeting someone for illegal purposes, drug pickup or human smuggling. But Avery vouched for Ramsey completely. Said the man had worked for him for 8 years, was reliable and honest, had no financial problems or suspicious associates. The county sheriff suggested the GPS data was corrupted, that the device had malfunctioned and reported false coordinates. That seemed like the most rational explanation. Except when I pulled up satellite imagery of those coordinates, I saw something that shouldn't have been there. A house. Not a rancher's line shack or a smuggler's stash house or a border patrol station. A proper house. 2 stories, pitched roof, what looked like a porch running along the front. Sitting in the middle of absolute nowhere. No roads leading to it, no other structures visible in any direction. I ran the coordinates through every database I could access. Property records, historical surveys, topographical maps, Bureau of Land Management files, tribal land registries, everything. Nothing indicated any structure at those coordinates. According to official records, that spot was empty federal land that had been empty federal land since Arizona became a state, but the satellite image showed a house, clear as day. I called the imagery analyst who'd pulled the file for me. When was this image captured? Let me check. Keys clicking. July 14th of this year, 2 months ago. Can you pull historical images of the same location? I want to see if the structure was there in previous years. Sure, give me a minute. More clicking, a long pause. That's weird. What? I've got imagery going back 15 years. The structure doesn't appear in any of them. Not until this July image. Before that, the location is empty desert. So, the house was built sometime in the last 2 months. Maybe. But Agent Holt, I'm looking at the ground around the structure. There's no construction debris, no vehicle tracks, no evidence of recent building activity. It's like the house just appeared fully formed. I stared at the image on my screen. The house looked old, actually. The roof had that particular weathering pattern you see on structures that have been exposed to sun and wind for years. The porch sagged slightly on one side. There was what looked like peeling paint on the siding. Can you get me a higher resolution image? This is the highest resolution available for civilian satellites. If you need better, you'd have to request military reconnaissance data, and that requires clearance I don't have. Understood. Send me what you've got. I printed the image, added it to the case file, and spent the rest of the day trying to make sense of it. A ranch hand disappears. His GPS puts him 15 miles from where his vehicle was found, at a location where a house exists in current satellite imagery but not in historical imagery, and where no official records indicate any structure should exist. 3 possibilities: equipment malfunction, deliberate deception, or something else entirely. I decided to drive out there and see for myself. The next morning, I loaded my vehicle with enough supplies for 2 days in the desert. Water, food, emergency shelter, first aid kit, backup radio, spare batteries, GPS unit, paper maps. I informed my supervisor where I was going and established a check-in protocol. I'd call every 4 hours, and if I missed 2 consecutive check-ins, he was to contact Border Patrol and County Search and Rescue. The drive from Tucson to Douglas took 2 hours. From Douglas, I headed south on a ranch road that turned to dirt after 5 miles and barely qualified as passable after 10. The terrain was classic Sonoran desert. Saguaro cactus, palo verde trees, endless expanses of creosote and brittle bush, all of it baking under a sun that felt like it was trying to burn through the atmosphere itself. After 40 minutes on the ranch road, I reached the approximate location where Ramsey's vehicle had been found. I parked, got out, looked around. Nothing but desert in every direction. The fence line Ramsey had been checking was visible about a quarter-mile east, barbed wire strung between crooked posts, marking the boundary between Avery's ranch and federal land. I pulled out my GPS, entered the coordinates where the house supposedly existed. 31,334 Semisianan, 109, Wyman 8223 km. The unit calculated the distance, 14.7 miles, bearing 168 degrees south-southeast. No roads led in that direction, not even trails, just virgin desert that looked like it had never seen a human footprint. I radioed my supervisor. "This is Holt. I'm at the initial search location. Beginning approach to coordinates of interest. Next check-in at 1300 hours. Copy that, Holt. Be careful out there." I started walking. The desert makes distance deceptive. What looks like a mile might be 3. What looks close might be impossible to reach. The terrain was relatively flat, but scattered with enough arroyos and rock formations to force constant detours. The temperature was 104 degrees according to my vehicle's thermometer, probably hotter now in full sun with no breeze. I made good time for the first hour, covering about 3 miles. The GPS kept me oriented, arrow pointing steadily toward those coordinates. I marked my trail with small rock cairns every quarter mile, enough to navigate back if needed, but subtle enough not to be obvious from a distance. At the 2-hour mark, I stopped for water and to check my position. 9.2 miles remaining. The terrain ahead looked identical to the terrain behind. Endless variations of the same desert landscape. No indication of human presence, no structures, no vehicles, nothing. I continued south. At 12:45 p.m., I radioed my supervisor. "This is Holt. I'm approximately 5 miles from target coordinates. No visual contact yet. Continuing approach. Copy. Any signs of the missing ranch hand? Negative. No tracks. No disturbance. Nothing to indicate anyone's been through this area recently. Keep me posted." I walked for another hour. The sun was directly overhead now, turning the world into shades of white and bleached tan. Heat waves distorted the horizon, making distant objects shimmer and dance. Several times I thought I saw structures ahead, only to reach the location and find nothing but rocks or cactus, or my own heat-exhausted mind playing tricks. At 2:17 p.m., with the GPS showing 1.3 miles remaining, I climbed to the top of a low rise to get a better view of the terrain ahead. And there it was. The house, sitting in a small depression maybe a mile distant, exactly where the GPS said it should be. 2 stories, pitched roof, long porch across the front. From this distance it looked like any other old desert homestead, the kind of structure you might find abandoned along a lonely highway. Except there was no highway, no road, no trail, no visible means of access. And something about it looked wrong in a way I couldn't immediately articulate. I pulled out my binoculars, studied the structure more carefully. The house was constructed of wood siding painted white, though most of the paint had weathered away, leaving bare gray boards. The roof was corrugated metal, rusty in places. 4 windows on the front face, 2 up and 2 down, all of them dark. The porch had a rocking chair positioned near the front door. What was wrong about it was the freshness. Despite the weathering and the decay, despite the appearance of having stood in this desert for decades, there was something too crisp about the image. The edges were too defined. The shadows fell at slightly wrong angles. It was like looking at a photograph of a house rather than an actual house. But that was ridiculous. I was seeing it with my own eyes through binoculars. It was there, solid, real. I approached slowly, alert for any signs of occupancy or threat. As I got closer, I could see more details. Laundry hanging on a line behind the house. 2 shirts, 3 pairs of pants, all faded by sun. A small garden plot to one side, dried out and dead. A utility shed near the back corner, door hanging crooked on broken hinges. The place looked abandoned, but only recently abandoned, like someone had lived there up until maybe a month ago and then left suddenly. At 50 yards I stopped and called out, "Federal agent, is anyone home?" No response. The desert absorbed my voice, gave nothing back. I approached the porch, climbed the 3 steps carefully. The wood was solid under my feet, didn't creak or sag despite its appearance of age. The rocking chair sat motionless, no breeze to move it. I tried the front door. Unlocked, it swung open smoothly, hinges silent. The interior was dark after the brutal brightness outside. I gave my eyes a moment to adjust, hand on my weapon, every sense alert for threat. The house was furnished. Living room with a couch and 2 chairs arranged around a cold fireplace. Kitchen visible through a doorway to the left. Table set for 2 with plates and cups. Stairs leading up to a 2nd floor directly ahead. Everything covered in a thin layer of dust, but not thick dust, not years of accumulation, more like a week or 2 of settling. I checked each room systematically, clearing the space like I'd been trained. Living room empty. Kitchen empty, but with food in the cabinets. Canned goods, dry pasta, basic staples. Refrigerator unplugged and empty. Bathroom with basic fixtures, all functional, water in the toilet bowl. 2 bedrooms upstairs, both with beds made, both looking like someone had slept in them recently. No signs of struggle, no blood, no indication of violence or rapid departure. Just an occupied house that had been quietly abandoned. In the main bedroom, I found a calendar hanging on the wall. It showed the current year but was turned to March, 6 months out of date. Several dates had been circled in red pen. March 3rd, March 17th, March 29th. No notation explaining what those dates signified. I took photographs of everything. The exterior, each room, the calendar, the table settings, the laundry on the line. Documented the coordinates with my GPS. Collected samples of dust and dirt for later analysis. Then I started searching for anything that might explain who had lived here and where they'd gone. In a drawer in the kitchen, I found paperwork. Bills for utilities, electricity, water, phone. All addressed to occupant Mile 98, Douglas, AZ. No street address, just Mile 98. The bills were current, paid through the end of last month. That was impossible. There were no utility lines out here, no power poles, no water pipes, no phone lines. I'd walked 15 miles through virgin desert to reach this place. There was no infrastructure to support a residence. But the bills showed account numbers, payment history, consumption data. The electricity bill indicated average usage consistent with a 2-person household. The water bill showed normal residential consumption. The phone bill listed dozens of calls made and received over the past 6 months. I pulled out my cell phone to take photos of the bills. No signal, as expected this far from any tower. But when I looked at the screen, the phone showed 5 bars of perfect coverage. That wasn't possible, but there it was. Full signal strength. I tried calling my supervisor. The phone connected immediately, rang twice, went to voicemail. I left a message. "This is Holt. I've located the structure at the coordinates. It's a 2-story residence, appears abandoned but recently occupied. I'm inside conducting a search. We'll call back with more details in 20 minutes. I hung up, checked the call log. The call had lasted 32 seconds. The timestamp showed 3:47 p.m. I looked at my watch. It showed 2:51 p.m. I checked my GPS unit. It showed 2:51 p.m. I checked the wall clock in the kitchen. It showed 3:47 p.m., second hand ticking steadily. 3 different time sources, 3 different times. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. The same feeling you get when you realize something fundamental about your situation is wrong and you can't immediately identify what it is. I went back outside, stood on the porch, looked around. The desert stretched empty in every direction. The sun was at the position it should be for 2:51 p.m., not 3:47 p.m. But when I looked at the shadows cast by the house, they corresponded to a sun position at 3:47 p.m. I pulled out my phone again, called my supervisor. No answer. Tried again. No answer. Checked the signal strength, still showing 5 bars. I walked around the house looking for utility connections. Found nothing. No power lines, no water lines, no phone lines. The house just sat there in the desert. Fully functional and completely impossible. Behind the house I found tire tracks. Recent, maybe a few days old. A vehicle had been parked here, then driven away heading north. I followed the tracks for about 50 yards before they simply stopped, vanished, like the vehicle had lifted into the air and disappeared. That's when I heard it. A sound from inside the house. Footsteps on the floor above me. I drew my weapon, moved quickly back to the front door. "Federal agent, show yourself." The footsteps continued, steady and unhurried, moving from one room to another. Heavy footsteps, probably male. I entered the house, cleared the first floor again, advanced up the stairs. The steps were on the second floor, in the main bedroom. I could hear them clearly now, regular pacing back and forth. I reached the landing, weapon raised, called out again. "Federal agent, come out with your hands visible." The footsteps stopped. I approached the bedroom door, pushed it open quickly, swept the room with my weapon. Empty, no one there. But the floor showed fresh footprints in the dust. Back and forth, from the window to the door and back again. The prints were distinct, clear, definitely made by boots. Made recently, made while I was standing outside the house listening to the footsteps. But the room was empty. I checked the closet. Empty, except for a few wire hangers. Checked under the bed. Nothing. The room had no other exits, no way for someone to have left without passing me. The footprints were there, but whoever made them was gone. I holstered my weapon, forced myself to breathe slowly and think rationally. There had to be an explanation. Hidden compartment, trick of acoustics, someone else in the house who'd slipped past me while I was searching upstairs. I went back through the entire house, methodically checking every space large enough to conceal a person. Found nothing. I was alone, except I could still hear something, not footsteps now, voices. Faint, coming from somewhere I couldn't pinpoint. 2 people talking, words indistinct but conversation clear. A man and a woman discussing something in low tones. I stood still, trying to locate the source. The voices seemed to come from the walls themselves, or from outside, or from inside my own head. The harder I tried to focus on them, the fainter they became. I went back outside, stood in the yard, listened. The voices continued, always just at the edge of comprehension. They sounded like they were having a normal domestic conversation. Discussing dinner maybe, or plans for the next day. Completely ordinary. Except there was no one there. I checked my watch, 3:12 p.m. Checked my phone, 4:23 p.m. Checked the kitchen clock visible through the window, 4:23 p.m. Time was fragmenting. Or my perception was fragmenting. Or something about this location made normal temporal progression impossible. I needed to leave, get back to my vehicle, report what I'd found, request backup and specialized equipment. This was beyond a standard missing persons investigation. This was something else entirely. I took one last set of photographs, made sure my GPS had logged the location accurately, and started walking north back the way I'd come. After 10 minutes, I looked back. The house was still visible, sitting in its depression, windows dark. The laundry still hung on the line. The rocking chair still sat motionless on the porch. After 20 minutes, I looked back again. The house was gone. Not over the horizon, not hidden by terrain. Just gone. The depression where it had sat was empty desert, no structure, no indication anything had ever been there. I checked my GPS. According to the coordinates, I'd walked 1.4 miles north from the house. But when I looked at the track log, there was a gap. The GPS showed me at the house at 3:12 p.m., then showed me 0.4 miles north at 3:34 p.m., but showed no movement between those 2 points. Like I'd teleported from one location to the other. I continued walking, kept checking behind me. The house didn't reappear. After an hour, I tried calling my supervisor again. The phone showed no signal now, as expected. The call failed. After 2 hours, I reached one of my rock cairn markers. I was back on the trail I'd made that morning. Everything was normal again. It took 3 more hours to reach my vehicle. The sun was setting when I arrived, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold. I was exhausted, dehydrated despite drinking regularly, and deeply unsettled by what I'd experienced. I tried the radio. Dead. Tried my phone. Still no signal. I'd have to drive back to Douglas before I could report. I started the engine, pointed the vehicle north, began the long drive back to civilization. In the rearview mirror, I watched the desert recede behind me. For just a moment, in the failing light, I thought I saw something. A house sitting in the distance, windows glowing with warm light, smoke rising from a chimney, 2 figures visible on the porch. I looked away, looked back. Nothing there. Just empty desert turning dark. I drove for 6 hours, stopping only once for gas in Douglas. By the time I reached Tucson, it was past midnight. I went straight to the office, filed a preliminary report, attached my photographs and GPS data. When I reviewed the photos on my computer, half of them were corrupted. The exterior shots of the house showed nothing but desert. The interior shots showed rooms, but they were subtly wrong. Furniture in different positions. Different items on the walls. Like I'd photographed a different house than the one I'd walked through. Only one photo was completely clear and uncorrupted. The calendar showing March with those 3 circled dates. I stared at that image for a long time, trying to understand what it meant. March 3rd, March 17th, March 29th. Then I noticed something. The dates formed a pattern. March 3rd was a Tuesday. March 17th was a Tuesday. March 29th was a Tuesday. Every other Tuesday, 3 of them. Like appointments. Like someone was marking days when something specific happened. I pulled up my case file, checked when Paul Ramsey had disappeared. September 9th, a Tuesday. I checked when the satellite image had been captured showing the house. July 14th, a Tuesday. I pulled up historical records, searched for other missing persons cases in this area. Found 7 over the past 15 years. 2 were recovered alive, 5 were never found. Of the 5 never found, 4 had disappeared on Tuesdays. I sat back in my chair, stared at my computer screen, felt that cold feeling in my stomach intensify. The house appeared on Tuesdays, or became accessible on Tuesdays, or pulled people to it on Tuesdays. Paul Ramsey had disappeared on a Tuesday. His GPS had put him at that house, and now he was gone. Along with 4 other people over 15 years, all vanished on Tuesdays, all from this same area. I needed to go back, on a Tuesday, document what happened when the pattern aligned, find Paul Ramsey if he was still alive, understand what that house was and why it only appeared on certain days. I looked at my calendar. Today was Thursday, September 11th. The next Tuesday was September 15th, 4 days away. I started planning my return trip. Outside my office window, Tucson glowed with normal city lights. Cars moved on normal streets. People lived normal lives, unaware that 40 miles south in the desert, a house existed that shouldn't exist, that appeared and disappeared according to a pattern no one understood, that collected people on Tuesdays and took them somewhere no GPS could track. I checked the weather forecast for Tuesday. Clear skies, high of 103 degrees. Perfect conditions for desert hiking. Perfect conditions for walking into something I didn't understand and might not walk back out of. But Paul Ramsey deserved an investigation. The other 4 missing persons deserved resolution. And if that house was claiming people every other Tuesday, someone needed to figure out how to stop it. I printed out all my notes, organized the case file, wrote detailed instructions for my supervisor in case I didn't return. Then I went home, set my alarm for early Tuesday morning, and tried to sleep. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that house. Windows dark, rocking chair motionless, footprints in dust made by someone who wasn't there, and voices. Always those voices, just at the edge of comprehension, discussing something that seemed important but that I could never quite hear clearly enough to understand. 4 days until Tuesday. 4 days until I would walk back into that desert and find out what happened to people who entered the house at mile 98. 4 days to decide if I was brave or just stupid. I decided it didn't matter. The job required both sometimes. And this job, this case, this impossible house that existed only on Tuesdays, required everything I had. So I would go back. And whatever I found there, I would document it, understand it, stop it if possible. Or I would become the 6th person to disappear on a Tuesday. Another name added to a file that would eventually be closed and forgotten. Either way, I would know the truth about mile 98. I drove out before dawn on September 15th. My supervisor had tried to talk me out of going back alone, suggested I take a partner or request Border Patrol support. I declined. If the house only appeared to certain people at certain times, bringing others might interfere with whatever mechanism controlled its manifestation. I needed to approach it the same way I had before. Alone, on foot, following the same route. The only difference was this time I knew what I was walking toward. I parked at the same location where Paul Ramsey's vehicle had been found. The sun was just breaking the horizon, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and orange. The temperature was already climbing toward what would be another brutally hot day. I checked my equipment one final time. 2 GPS units for redundancy, backup radio, 3 cameras, standard digital, video, and thermal imaging, 4 liters of water, emergency beacon, first aid kit, and my service weapon, though I doubted a gun would be useful against whatever I was about to encounter. I also carried a notebook and pen, old-school backup in case all my electronics failed. And I'd written a letter to my supervisor explaining everything I'd found, sealed it in an envelope, and left it on my desk with instructions to open it only if I didn't return by Friday. At 6:47 a.m., I radioed my check-in. "This is Holt, beginning approach to target location. Next check-in at 1000 hours. "Copy that, Holt. Please reconsider taking backup." "Negative. This approach needs to be identical to the first one. We'll maintain check-in schedule." "Understood. Be safe out there." I started walking south. The morning desert was beautiful in the way harsh places can be beautiful when you see them in favorable light. The low sun turned every rock and plant into something sculptural. A family of javelinas crossed my path, moving with that peculiar sideways gait, grunting softly to each other. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead, hunting for breakfast. Under different circumstances, I might have enjoyed the hike, but every step took me closer to that house, and I couldn't shake the feeling I was walking into something that didn't want to be found, but couldn't help being found, like a trap that had to spring whenever the right conditions aligned. At 10 o'clock a.m., I checked in as scheduled. "This is Holt, 6.2 miles from target coordinates. No visual contact yet. Continuing approach." "Copy. Any anomalies?" "Negative. Everything normal so far." That was true. The desert looked exactly as it had on Thursday. Same terrain, same vegetation, same brutal sun. No indication that anything unusual was about to happen. But I could feel it. That particular tension in the air that precedes thunderstorms, except there were no clouds and the barometric pressure was stable. Something was building toward some kind of release. At 11:34 a.m., with 2.1 miles remaining according to my GPS, I crested a rise and saw it again. The house. This time it looked different. The windows glowed with interior light despite the bright midday sun. Smoke rose from the chimney, thin and white. The laundry on the line was different. Different clothes, different colors. And there were two vehicles parked near the house. A pickup truck and a sedan, both looking new, both out of place in this empty desert. I stopped, pulled out my binoculars, studied the scene carefully. The front door was open. I could see movement inside, shadows crossing behind windows. Someone was home, or something was creating the appearance of someone being home. I descended the rise, approached cautiously, weapon accessible but not drawn. At 200 yards, I called out, "Federal agent, I need to speak with whoever's inside the house." No response. The shadows continued moving behind the windows. The smoke continued rising from the chimney. At 100 yards, I called out again, "This is the FBI. I need you to come outside with your hands visible." Still no response. I reached the vehicles, checked them carefully. The pickup was a Ford F-150, maybe 2 years old, covered in a light layer of dust but otherwise clean. The sedan was a Honda Accord, similar vintage, equally clean. Both had Arizona plates. I ran the numbers through my phone, which again showed full signal strength in the middle of nowhere, and got hits. The pickup was registered to Paul Ramsey, the missing ranch hand. The sedan was registered to Jennifer Collar, one of the 4 unsolved disappearances from my historical search. She'd vanished 3 years ago, also on a Tuesday, also from this general area. I looked at the house. The shadows were still moving inside. 2 people, maybe more, going about what looked like normal domestic activities. I climbed the porch steps, stood at the open door, called inside. "Federal agent, I'm coming in." I entered, weapon drawn now, clearing each space systematically like I had on Thursday. The house was identical to what I'd found before, except now it was fully occupied, or had been recently. The kitchen showed evidence of a breakfast eaten this morning. Dirty dishes in the sink, coffee pot still warm to the touch. The living room had magazines on the coffee table dated to this month. The fireplace held fresh ash. But no people. Despite the shadows I'd seen through the windows, despite the signs of recent occupation, the house was empty. I climbed the stairs carefully, checked both bedrooms. One looked like it belonged to a man. Work clothes in the closet, men's toiletries in the adjacent bathroom. The other looked like a woman's room. Different clothes, different items. Both beds were made but showed the impression of having been slept in recently. In the man's room, I found a wallet on the dresser. Paul Ramsey's driver's license inside, along with $43 cash and a photo of an older man I assumed was Tom Avery. In the woman's room, I found a purse, Jennifer Coller's license inside, along with car keys, makeup, and a phone. I tried the phone. Dead battery. I plugged it into a charger in the wall outlet, which shouldn't have worked since there was no power to the house, but the outlet was live, and waited for the phone to boot. While it charged, I continued searching. Found food in the pantry, fresh, not canned. Found clothes in both closets that looked recently worn. Found a calendar in the kitchen showing the current month, with today's date, Tuesday, September 15th, circled in red pen. Just like the March calendar I'd seen on Thursday had shown circled Tuesdays. The phone finished charging. I unlocked it, no password. Apparently Jennifer Coller hadn't been security conscious, and checked recent activity. The last text message was from 3 years ago, dated the day she disappeared. It was to her sister. Going to check out something weird in the desert. Call you tonight. She'd never called. The last call in the log was also from 3 years ago. A 2-minute call to 911, reporting that she was lost and requesting assistance. I pulled up the photos on the phone. The most recent was from 3 years ago, but it showed this house. Jennifer had photographed it from the same angle I had, documenting the structure. In the photo, 2 people stood on the porch. A man and a woman, too distant and blurry to identify. I moved to the window, looked outside at the same angle. The yard was empty. The vehicle sat motionless. The desert stretched silent in all directions. But when I looked at my own phone's camera view, pointed at the same scene, I could see them. 2 figures standing in the yard. Paul Ramsey and Jennifer Coller, or reasonable approximations of them. They were talking to each other, gestures animated, like they were having a serious conversation about something important. I looked up from the camera. The yard was empty. Looked back at the camera. The figures were still there. I put my phone down, rubbed my eyes, looked again. Empty yard. Camera view. 2 figures. I was seeing something through the camera that I couldn't see with my naked eyes. Either the camera was showing me something that wasn't there, or my eyes were failing to show me something that was there. I went outside, walked toward where the figures appeared to be standing in the camera view, held the phone at arm's length, using it to navigate toward them. According to the camera, I was walking right through them. They didn't move, didn't react, continued their conversation like I wasn't there. I stopped, turned around. Through the camera, I could see them behind me now, still talking. I watched through the screen as Paul gestured toward the house, then toward the south, like he was explaining something about directions or locations. Jennifer nodded, looked worried. Then Paul turned and looked directly at my camera. His expression changed, mouth forming words I couldn't hear. He pointed at me, or at the camera, or at something behind me. Jennifer turned too, saw what Paul was pointing at, and her face went pale. Both of them started backing away, slowly at first, then faster, then running. They ran toward the house, up the porch steps, through the front door. I lowered the camera, looked at the house with my own eyes. The door was still open. No one had run inside. No one was there. Camera view. The door was closed. I approached the house again, climbed the porch steps, reached for the door handle. Through my own eyes, the door was open. Through the camera view, the door was closed. I pushed. The door swung open to my touch, even though the camera showed it remaining closed. I stepped inside. The house was different now. Not in major ways, but in details. The furniture was arranged slightly differently. The photographs on the walls showed different people. The magazines on the coffee table were from different years, and I could hear voices. Clear this time, not muffled or distant. Paul and Jennifer, somewhere upstairs, talking urgently. Paul, did you see it? Jennifer, yes, what was it? Paul, I don't know, but it saw us. Jennifer, should we try to leave again? Paul, you know we can't. Not until the door opens. Jennifer, when will that be? Paul, I don't know. Maybe never. I climbed the stairs, following the voices. They were coming from the main bedroom. The door was closed. I knocked. Paul Ramsey? Jennifer Caller? This is FBI Special Agent Rebecca Holt. I'm here to help you. The voices stopped. I tried the door handle. Locked. I knocked again. Paul? Jennifer? Can you hear me? Footsteps inside the room. Moving toward the door. A shadow visible in the crack at the bottom. Then Paul's voice very close, speaking through the door. Are you real? Yes, I'm FBI. I've been looking for you. How do we know you're real? How do we know you're not another echo? Another echo? There are lots of echoes here. Versions of things that aren't quite right. Reflections that don't match. We've learned not to trust what we see. I'm real. I drove out here from Tucson. I'm investigating your disappearance. Your vehicle is outside, Paul. So is yours, Jennifer. Silence for a long moment, then, what day is it? Tuesday, September 15th. What year? I told them. Another long silence. Then Jennifer's voice. That's impossible. We've only been here a week. Paul, you've been missing for 6 days. Jennifer, you've been missing for 3 years. No. Her voice was strained, on the edge of panic. No, that's not possible. I just got here. I saw the house. I came to investigate, and then I couldn't leave. Paul arrived a few days later. We've been trying to find a way out, but the doors don't work right, and the windows won't open, and every time we think we're outside, we're still inside. I can help you, but you need to open the door. We can't. It's locked from your side. It's locked from my side, too. Then we're stuck. We're always stuck. That's what this place does. It puts you in rooms you can't leave, shows you doors that don't open, gives you windows that look out on places that don't exist. I examined the door. Standard interior door, simple lock, nothing sophisticated. I could force it easily enough. I stepped back, kicked hard, just below the handle. The door shuddered but held. Kicked again. The frame cracked. Third kick. The door burst open. The room beyond was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no people, no signs anyone had been there. Just bare walls and bare floor, and a single window showing the desert outside. Paul? Jennifer? No answer. I checked the closet. Empty. Checked the bathroom. Empty. The room had no other exits. But I'd heard them. They'd been right here speaking to me through the door. I'd seen the shadow under the door, heard the footsteps. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, looked at the room through the screen. 2 people sat on a bed that I couldn't see with my naked eyes. Paul Ramsey and Jennifer Caller, looking exhausted and defeated. They were looking directly at me, or at the camera, mouths moving in speech I couldn't hear. I held the phone toward them, spoke loudly. I can see you through the camera. Can you hear me? They didn't react. Kept talking to each other, gestures becoming more agitated. I tried typing on my phone, holding it up for them to read. Can you see this? No reaction. I was in the same room as them, but we were separated by something the camera could bridge visually but not in any other way. Different versions of the same space, overlapping but not touching. I went back downstairs, tried to think rationally. 2 missing people were here, in this house, trapped in some kind of dimensional overlap or temporal displacement or phenomenon I had no framework for understanding. They'd been here for 6 days or 3 years, depending on whose timeline you believed. And I had no way to reach them. I checked my watch. 2:17 p.m., checked my phone. 3:47 p.m., checked the kitchen clock. 3:47 p.m., time was fragmenting again. I'd lost over an hour somewhere between entering the house and breaking down that door. I tried calling my supervisor. The call connected, went straight to voicemail. I left a message. "This is Holt. I found Paul Ramsey and Jennifer Collar. They're alive but trapped in the structure. I'm attempting to extract them. Next check-in at 1600 hours. I hung up. Checked the call log. The call showed as having been made at 3:47 p.m. 3:47 p.m. The same time my watch had frozen it when I'd first found this house on Thursday. The same time that seemed to be some kind of nexus or anchor point for whatever was happening here. I went outside, walked around the house, looking for any detail I'd missed. Found the utility shed I'd seen on my first visit. The door was hanging crooked, held by one hinge. Inside the shed were tools, old and dusty. A workbench, a calendar on the wall showing 1987, turned to March. 3 dates circled. March 3rd, 10th, 17th. All Tuesdays, going back nearly 40 years. On the workbench was a notebook, pages yellowed with age. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was cramped and difficult to read, but the content was clear enough. It was a journal kept by someone named William Harper. The entries dated back to 1987, describing how he'd built this house in the desert to escape civilization, to live off the grid, to be left alone. But the later entries became strange. Harper wrote about how the house started changing, how rooms would rearrange themselves, how he'd go to sleep in one layout and wake up in another, how he'd see people who weren't there, how time started working differently, days blurring together, weeks passing in what felt like hours. The final entry, dated March 29, 1987, was barely legible. The house has learned. It knows what I want. It shows me versions where she didn't leave, where we're still together, where everything is perfect. But they're not real. They're echoes. And I'm becoming an echo too. If anyone finds this, don't stay. Don't let it show you what you want to see. It only knows how to trap you with your own desires. Below that, in different handwriting, newer ink. Too late, we stayed. Jennifer Collar, 2022. And below that, we're still here, Paul Ramsey, 2025. I stared at the entries. Paul had written his note this week. He'd found this journal, read Harper's warning, and added his own message. But he dated it 2025. It was 2024. Paul couldn't date something 2025, unless from his perspective, trapped in whatever temporal distortion this house created, a year had passed. He'd been here 6 days according to outside time, but he'd experienced a full year inside this place, which meant Jennifer, missing for 3 years outside, had experienced something incomprehensible inside. Decades, maybe. Or time might not work linearly for her at all. She might have experienced 3 days or 3 hours or 3 decades, all compressed or expanded by whatever mechanism operated here. I took the journal, brought it back inside the house, set it on the kitchen table, opened to the final pages, used my phone's camera to look at the table. Through the camera, Paul and Jennifer sat at the table. They were reading the journal. Paul was pointing at Harper's final entry, saying something to Jennifer. She was shaking her head, looking devastated. I set my phone down so the camera pointed at them, started typing in a text message. I can see you through the camera. I am FBI agent Rebecca Holt. I am going to get you out. Held the phone up, showing them the message on the screen. Paul looked directly at the camera. His mouth moved. I couldn't hear him, but I could read his lips. How? I typed, working on it. Have you tried leaving on a Tuesday? Paul typed something on the table with his finger, like he was writing a response. I pointed my camera at where he was writing. Dust on the table shifted, formed words. We can't leave. Doors don't lead outside. They lead to other rooms. Windows don't open. We're stuck. I typed, what about breaking through walls? Paul wrote, tried. Walls are solid. No matter how much we break, they repair themselves. I typed, what if I break through from my side? Paul and Jennifer looked at each other. Conversation I couldn't hear. Then Paul wrote, maybe, but you might get stuck too. I typed, willing to risk it. Get ready. I went outside, grabbed a shovel from the utility shed. Came back to the kitchen, checked the camera view. Paul and Jennifer were standing near the far wall, away from where I was about to strike. I swung the shovel hard into the wall, aiming for the spot between two studs. The drywall cracked, gave way. I swung again, opening a larger hole. Again, pulling away chunks of drywall and insulation. Through the camera view, nothing changed. The wall remained intact from Paul and Jennifer's perspective. I kept swinging, made a hole large enough to step through, used the shovel to clear away debris. Camera view, wall still intact. But Paul was approaching it now, reaching out. His hand pressed against the wall from his side. And at the exact spot where his hand pressed, I could see something from my side. A slight shimmer, like heat waves, like the boundary between two states of matter. I reached out, touched the shimmer. It felt like touching the surface of water, that moment of resistance before your hand breaks through. I pushed harder. My hand went through. From the other side, Paul grabbed my hand. I could feel his grip, solid and real and desperate. I pulled, he resisted, then moved forward. His head and shoulders came through the shimmer, through the boundary between his version of the house and mine. For a moment, he existed in both simultaneously. I could see him with my naked eyes and through the camera. Two versions of the same person, overlapping but slightly out of phase. Then he tumbled through completely, falling into my version of reality, solid and real and gasping. "Jennifer!" he shouted. "Come on!" Through the hole, through the shimmer, I could see her. She was reaching toward us, hand extended. I reached back, grabbed her hand, pulled. She came through the same way Paul had, that moment of existing in two places at once, then collapsing into just one. Both of them lay on the floor, breathing hard, staring around like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Are we out?" Jennifer asked. "Are we really out?" "You're out," I said. "But we need to leave immediately. This place isn't stable." I helped them stand, guided them toward the front door. Behind us, I could hear something. A sound like tearing fabric amplified 1,000 times. The house was reacting to their escape, the structure itself protesting the loss of its captives. We reached the front porch. I practically pushed them down the steps, out into the yard, away from the house. "Your vehicles," I said. "Can they drive?" "I don't know," Paul said. "We haven't tried." "Try now." Paul ran to his truck, Jennifer to her sedan. Both vehicles started on the first try, engines running smooth and normal. I ran to Paul's truck. "Follow me. Don't stop. Don't look back. Don't deviate from my route. Understood?" He nodded, face pale but determined. Jennifer pulled her sedan up next to us. "Which way?" "North. Stay close." We drove. I led, Paul behind me, Jennifer behind Paul. Away from the house into the desert, following the GPS coordinates back toward my starting point. After 2 miles, I looked in my rearview mirror. The house was still visible, but it was flickering now. Appearing and disappearing, solid one moment and translucent the next. After 5 miles, I looked again. The house was gone, just empty desert where it had been. After 10 miles, I stopped, got out, waited for Paul and Jennifer to do the same. "We're safe," I said. "Whatever that place is, we're far enough away that it can't pull us back." Jennifer collapsed to her knees, started crying. Paul sat on the ground, head in his hands. I gave them water, let them recover. Then I pulled out my phone, which now showed 1 bar and the correct time, and called my supervisor. "This is Holt. I've recovered Paul Ramsey and Jennifer Collar. Both alive, both ambulatory, both in need of medical attention. Requesting immediate assistance and transport." "Jesus Christ, Holt, you found Collar? She's been missing for 3 years. "Yes, sir. It's a long story and you're not going to believe most of it. But I have them both and we're safe." "What's your location?" I gave him the coordinates. He said search and rescue would be there in under an hour. We waited in the shade of my vehicle. Paul and Jennifer barely spoke, still processing what had happened to them. I documented everything with photographs and notes, knowing that most of it would sound insane when I tried to explain it. When the helicopters finally arrived, when Paul and Jennifer were loaded aboard and lifted away toward hospitals and debriefing, and the slow process of returning to normal life, I stood alone in the desert and looked south. Somewhere out there, at coordinates that only appeared on Tuesdays, a house waited. Empty now, but not for long, never for long. It would catch someone else eventually, on another Tuesday. Another person who saw what they wanted to see, who got trapped by their own desires, who couldn't distinguish between real and echo until it was too late. I would file my report, include everything, recommend that the area be marked as hazardous, that access be restricted, that anyone who disappeared on a Tuesday in that region be considered at risk of something worse than normal desert dangers. But I knew what would happen. The report would be filed, read, and quietly dismissed as the heat-induced delusions of an agent who'd spent too long in the sun. The house would remain there, waiting, and eventually, inevitably, someone else would find it. The debriefing took 3 days. Paul Ramsey and Jennifer Collar were held in a medical facility in Tucson while doctors examined them and while my supervisor tried to make sense of their statements. I was placed on administrative leave pending a psych evaluation, standard procedure when an agent reports experiences that seem outside the boundaries of normal reality. I didn't fight it. I knew how the story sounded. A house that appeared on Tuesdays in a location where no house should exist. People trapped in overlapping versions of the same space. Time distortions, visual displacement, echoes that looked real but weren't. The whole thing read like a psychotic break or severe heat exhaustion, but Paul and Jennifer told the same story I did. Independently, in separate interviews, they described the same impossible house, the same temporal anomalies, the same feeling of being trapped in a place that followed rules different from the rest of the world. And their vehicles were real. Paul's truck had been missing for 6 days, Jennifer's sedan for 3 years. Both had been photographed, documented, searched, and both had driven out of the desert under their own power with me and their former occupants inside, physical evidence that something had happened, even if no one could explain what. The psych evaluation was thorough. 3 sessions with a bureau psychologist, cognitive testing, Stress assessment, the works. I passed. No signs of delusion or dissociation. No indications of mental breakdown. Just a rational agent reporting irrational events in a rational manner. My supervisor called me into his office on the fourth day. He looked like he hadn't slept well, and I didn't blame him. This case had implications that went far beyond a simple missing persons recovery. "Agent Holt," he said, "I've read your report, all 14,000 words of it. And I've read the medical reports on Ramsey and Collar, and I've looked at your photos and GPS logs and every piece of evidence you collected. And I believe you experienced something anomalous. I don't know what. The house could be a drug lab with hallucinogenic compounds in the air. Could be a classified military installation with psychological warfare testing. Could be a natural phenomenon we don't understand yet that affects human perception. You think I was drugged or exposed to military experiments? I think there has to be a rational explanation, and those are more rational than some of the alternatives. What about the GPS data? What about the satellite imagery? What about the fact that two people who disappeared years apart both ended up in the same impossible location? I know that's the part that keeps me awake at night." He rubbed his eyes, looked at me directly. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm taking you off the case officially. Your report will be filed and classified. Paul Ramsey and Jennifer Collar will be listed as recovered through routine investigative work. No mention of the house, no mention of the anomalies. You're burying it. I'm being practical. If we file a report claiming FBI agents found a house that shouldn't exist, that operates outside normal space-time, that traps people in temporal loops, we'll be laughed out of every court and every investigation we touch from now on. The Bureau's credibility would be destroyed. So we just pretend it's not there? Wait for more people to disappear? No, I'm authorizing a different approach. We establish a monitoring protocol. Check the location every Tuesday. Document any appearances of the structure. And if it appears, we mark it as hazardous and keep people away until it disappears again. That's not going to work. People don't stumble across that house accidentally. It pulls them, shows them something they want to see. By the time we know they're at risk, they're already trapped. Then, what do you suggest?" I thought about it. I want to study the pattern. All the disappearances in that area, not just the ones we know about. Go back 50 years if records exist. Find every missing persons case within 20 miles of those coordinates. Map them against days of the week, times, weather conditions, anything that might predict when and why the house appears. To what end? To understand it. If we can predict when it manifests, we can prevent people from being in the area during dangerous times. If we can understand what triggers it, maybe we can find a way to shut it down permanently. My supervisor was quiet for a long time, considering. That would require resources, time, authorization from people who don't want to believe this kind of thing exists. I know. And if you find evidence that this phenomenon has been happening for decades, if you prove this thing has been taking people for years, and we've done nothing about it, the political fallout would be substantial. I know that too. But you want to do it anyway? Yes, sir. He nodded slowly. All right. You're officially assigned to cold case review for the Tucson field office. You'll investigate historical missing persons, standard archival work. What you choose to focus on within that mandate is your discretion. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If you find something we can't explain, if this becomes public, both our careers are over. But I agree with you. We can't just let this thing keep taking people. I spent the next 2 months in archives. County records, Sheriff's Department files, newspaper morgue, Bureau historical cases. Any disappearance within 20 miles of coordinates 31.3470 109.1 Testigos from 1970 to present. Found 23 cases, 23 people who'd vanished in that region over 55 years. Some had been recovered alive, some recovered deceased, some never found. But there was a pattern. 17 of the 23 had disappeared on Tuesdays. Of the 6 exceptions, 4 had disappeared on dates when Tuesday fell on a holiday or had some other unusual characteristic: leap day, daylight savings transition, eclipse. Only 2 had vanished on days with no Tuesday connection at all, and both of those were in the 1970s, before GPS and detailed record-keeping made timeline reconstruction reliable. The Tuesday pattern was undeniable. I mapped the disappearances chronologically. They came in clusters. 3 or 4 in a single year, then none for several years, then another cluster. The clusters appeared to be getting more frequent. The 1970s had 1 cluster. The 1980s had 2. The 90s had 3. The 2000s had 4. This decade was already at 5. Whatever the house was, it was becoming more active. I looked for other patterns. Age of victims, no correlation. Gender, roughly equal distribution. Occupation, no pattern. Ethnicity, no pattern. The house didn't discriminate. It took ranchers and hikers and border patrol agents and illegal crossers and tourists and locals without preference. The only commonality was the day of the week and the location. I requested satellite imagery for every Tuesday over the past year, focused on those coordinates. Found something interesting. The house appeared on the 3rd Tuesday of each month, visible in satellite imagery for approximately 6 hours, then vanishing. Always the 3rd Tuesday. Never the 1st, 2nd, 4th, or 5th. Just the 3rd. I pulled up the calendar for William Harper's journal, the one from 1987. The circled dates, March 3rd, 10th, 17th, all Tuesdays, but not all 3rd Tuesdays. I checked. March 3rd, 1987 was the 1st Tuesday of the month. March 10th was the 2nd. March 17th was the 3rd. The pattern had evolved. Harper's house had appeared weekly initially. Now it only appeared once per month. But the manifestation was lasting longer. 6 hours now versus what might have been minutes or seconds in 1987. It was learning, adapting, becoming more efficient at whatever it did. I compiled all this data into a report, attached maps and timelines and probability analyses, presented it to my supervisor. He read it in silence, face growing progressively more concerned. When he finished, he set the report down, looked at me and said, "This thing is getting stronger." Yes, and if the pattern continues, eventually it won't just appear on 3rd Tuesdays. It'll appear more frequently, maybe daily, maybe permanently. That's my assessment. What happens when a house that traps people in temporal loops becomes a permanent fixture of the landscape? Nothing good. He stood, walked to his window, stared out at the Tucson skyline. We need to destroy it. I don't know if we can. It's not entirely in our reality. Might not be entirely physical. Every time I think I understand what it is, it reveals another layer that makes less sense. But we have to try. I agree. When's the next 3rd Tuesday? I checked my calendar. October 20th, 3 weeks from now. That's when we go back. Full team, proper equipment, authorization to use any means necessary to eliminate the structure. Sir, I don't think conventional approaches will work. Maybe not, but we have to try. I'm not waiting for this thing to take more people while we debate methodology. Over the next 3 weeks, we assembled a team. Structural engineers to analyze the building, demolition experts to plan its destruction, scientists from various disciplines to study the temporal anomalies, and a full tactical team for security and safety. Everyone was briefed on what to expect. though I could tell most of them didn't really believe it. How could they? I'd seen it myself, and I still had trouble believing it. We mobilized on the morning of October 20th. 5 vehicles, 17 people, enough equipment to establish a research station and conduct a controlled demolition. The caravan drove south from Tucson at dawn, reaching the staging area by 9 a.m. From there, we proceeded on foot, just like I had before. But this time, we had manpower to carry heavy equipment: generators, demolition charges, measurement devices, containment barriers in case the house released anything hazardous when destroyed. At 11:34 a.m., right on schedule, the house appeared. One moment, the depression was empty desert. The next moment, the house was there, fully formed, solid, looking exactly as it had on my previous visits. Windows glowing with interior light. Smoke from the chimney, laundry on the line. The tactical team immediately established a perimeter while the scientists began taking readings. Thermal imaging showed heat signatures inside the house consistent with human occupation. Electromagnetic sensors detected anomalous field fluctuations. Temporal measurement devices, experimental equipment I didn't fully understand, showed time dilation effects within a 100-meter radius of the structure. Agent Holt, one of the engineers, called. "Look at this." I joined him at his monitoring station. He was showing me ground-penetrating radar data. The house has no foundation. It's sitting on dirt, but the ground underneath shows no compression, no disturbance. It's like the house weighs nothing. Or like the house isn't entirely here, I said. That's impossible. And yet, here we are. The demolition team spent 2 hours setting charges. They placed explosives at key structural points, designed to bring the entire building down in a controlled collapse. Enough explosive power to level a normal structure 3 times this size. At 2:00 p.m., with everyone at safe distance, they triggered the detonation. The explosion was enormous. A concussive blast that knocked dust into the air and rattled equipment 100 yards away. When the smoke cleared, the house stood intact, completely undamaged. The explosives had detonated. The crater marks were visible in the surrounding dirt, but the structure itself showed no damage whatsoever. "That's not possible," the demolition chief said. "Those charges should have reduced it to splinters." We tried again. Doubled the explosive load. Same result. The charges detonated, the house remained untouched. We tried a bulldozer, brought in on a truck and driven to the site. The operator attempted to push against the structure's wall. The blade passed right through it, meeting no resistance, like pushing through holographic projection. But when the operator reached out to touch the wall with his hand, it was solid. Solid to organic matter, intangible to machinery. One of the scientists suggested we try fire. We soaked the exterior with accelerant, ignited it. The fire burned for 20 minutes, consuming all the accelerant. When it burned out, the house was unmarked. Not even smoke damage. We couldn't demolish it, couldn't burn it, couldn't affect it with any physical means. The structure existed in our reality just enough to trap people, but not enough to be destroyed by our methods. At 4:00 p.m., my supervisor made the call. "Pack it up, we're not going to crack this today." "We can't just leave it," I protested. "We don't have a choice. We've thrown everything at it and accomplished nothing. We need to regroup, consult with experts in fields I don't even know exist yet." "Sir, that's an order, Agent Holt. We extract now, before we lose someone else to this thing." The team began packing equipment. I stood apart, staring at the house. It looked back at me with dark windows, patient and implacable. Then I saw something. A figure in one of the upstairs windows. Brief, just a glimpse, but definitely there. Someone watching us from inside. I pulled out my phone, zoomed the camera on the window. Through the screen, I could see more clearly. It was Jennifer Caller, but that was impossible. I'd extracted her 3 weeks ago. She was in Tucson, recovered, undergoing therapy. Unless the version I'd extracted was an echo, unless the real Jennifer was still inside, or unless multiple versions of her existed simultaneously, one escaped and one trapped. I approached the house, against protocol, against orders. Climbed the porch steps, entered through the front door. The interior looked different again. New furniture, different photographs, different details. Like the house had reset itself after our intrusion, prepared fresh traps for new victims. I climbed the stairs, went to the window where I'd seen Jennifer. The room was empty, but when I looked through my phone's camera at the same space, she was there. Sitting on a bed I couldn't see, head in her hands, crying. I held up the phone, typed, "Jennifer, can you see this?" She looked up, looked directly at the camera. Mouth formed words. "Help me." I typed, "I thought we got you out." She replied by writing in dust I couldn't see but the camera could. "That wasn't me. That was another version. I'm still here, always here." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. If we'd extracted an echo, if the real Jennifer was still trapped, then everything we'd accomplished was meaningless. The house had simply let us take a copy while keeping the original. And if it could do that with Jennifer, it could do that with anyone. Including Paul Ramsey, including anyone else it ever captured. The entities we'd rescued weren't the real people. They were duplicates, echoes, versions the house was willing to release because the originals remained trapped. I typed, "How do I get the real you out?" Jennifer wrote, "You can't. The house only releases echoes. The real us stay forever." I typed, "There has to be a way." She wrote, "Find William Harper. He built this place. He's still here somewhere. He knows how it works." I typed, "Where?" She wrote, "In the basement, where the house keeps its real prisoners." I lowered the phone. I'd searched the house twice and never seen a basement entrance. I went back downstairs, looked more carefully. In the kitchen, I found a door I'd assumed led to a pantry. Opened it, stairs leading down into darkness. I pulled out my flashlight, descended carefully. The stairs were old, wood creaking under my weight. At the bottom was a corridor lined with doors. 5 doors on each side, 10 total, all closed. I tried the first door. Locked. Tried the second. Also locked. The third door opened. Inside was a small room, maybe 10 by 10 feet, empty except for a chair in the center. On the chair sat a man who looked like he'd been there for decades. Gaunt, pale, wearing clothes that had rotted to rags. "William Harper?" I asked. He looked up. His eyes were distant, unfocused. "Are you real?" "Yes." So was everyone else. They all seemed real. Then they turned out to be echoes. He laughed, a sound like paper tearing. I learned to stop believing. Safer that way. "I'm FBI Special Agent Rebecca Holt. I'm investigating this structure. You won't understand it. I built it, and I don't understand it. Started as just a house, place to live. Then it changed, learned, adapted. Started showing me things I wanted to see. My wife who'd left me, version where she came back. But it wasn't her, just an echo. I tried to leave, but by then the house wouldn't let me. Been here ever since. 40 years, or 4 years, or 4 minutes. Time doesn't mean anything down here. How do I destroy the house? You don't. It's not entirely physical. It exists in multiple states simultaneously. The version you see is just an interface, a point of contact. The real house, the core of it, exists somewhere else. Somewhere that isn't a place. Then How do I stop it from taking people? He looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. You become part of it. You let it trap you completely. Then from inside you might be able to affect the structure. Might be able to shut it down. But you'd never get back out. Someone has to try. Many have tried. All of them are down here now, in rooms like this, waiting for time to mean something again. I heard footsteps above. My team coming to look for me, probably. I needed to get out, report what I'd learned, decide on next steps. But if I left, would I ever find this basement again? Or would the house rearrange itself, hide its prisoners in new locations? I made a decision. I'm coming back, with help. We're going to get everyone out. Harper smiled sadly. No, you're not. But I admire the optimism. Go, before the house decides to keep you too. I climbed the stairs, emerged into the kitchen. The team was packing the last equipment outside. Through the window I could see the sun getting lower, shadows lengthening. I checked my watch. 5:47 p.m. Checked my phone. 5:47 p.m. For once, they agreed. I went outside, joined the team. As we walked away from the house, I looked back one last time. All the windows were full of faces. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. People trapped in overlapping versions of the same space, all watching us leave, all hoping someone would figure out how to free them. But I didn't know how, and neither did anyone else. The house disappeared at exactly 6 o'clock p.m., vanishing between 1 second and the next. The depression was empty again, just desert, like nothing had ever been there. We drove back to Tucson in silence. 3 months have passed since that October day. 3 months of meetings and consultations and debates with people who have expertise in fields that barely exist. Quantum physicists, temporal mechanics researchers, theoretical mathematicians, paranormal investigators. Anyone who might have insight into how to handle a structure that exists partially outside normal space-time. No one has answers. Everyone has theories, but theories don't rescue people trapped in overlapping dimensional states. The house continues to appear every third Tuesday. We monitor it now, satellite observation and ground-based sensors. It manifests at 11:34 a.m., remains visible for 6 hours, vanishes at 5:34 p.m., like clockwork. But something is changing. The manifestation is lasting longer. In November, it lasted 6 hours and 7 minutes. In December, 6 hours and 19 minutes. In January, 6 hours and 34 minutes. The pattern is accelerating. At the current rate of increase, by next summer, the house will be appearing for 12 hours. By next fall, permanently. And we still don't know how to stop it. Paul Ramsey and Jennifer Collar, the versions we extracted, the echoes, are living apparently normal lives. Ramsey went back to working for Tom Avery. Collar moved to Phoenix, started a new job. Both underwent extensive psychological evaluation. Both show no signs of lasting trauma. But sometimes I see them looking south, toward the desert, with expressions I can't read. Like they know they left something behind. Like part of them is still trapped in that house. Will always be trapped in that house, no matter how many copies escape. I visit the location every third Tuesday. Against protocol, against orders, I drive out to those coordinates and watch the house appear. Document it, photograph it, look for changes or patterns or any insight that might help. I never enter. I learned that lesson. Go inside too many times and the house starts recognizing you. Starts showing you things you want to see. Starts preparing a trap customized to your particular desires and fears. But I watch, and I count the faces in the windows. There are more every month. The house is collecting people faster now, pulling in victims from wider geographic ranges. Last Tuesday, someone disappeared in New Mexico, 50 miles from the usual pattern area. Their GPS put them at coordinates that don't exist. I suspect they're in the house now, in one of those basement rooms, adding their face to the crowd in the windows. We've established a warning system, posted signs in the area advising hikers and travelers to avoid the region on third Tuesdays, coordinated with Border Patrol and county sheriffs to increase patrols, turn people away. It helps. But not everyone sees the signs. Not everyone heeds the warnings. And the house doesn't just trap people who wander close. It calls to them, shows them something they want to see, pulls them from miles away with GPS glitches and false imagery. You can't warn someone away from seeing what they most want to see. I've started having dreams about the house. In the dreams, I'm walking through endless corridors, opening doors to find rooms full of people who all look like me. Different versions, different ages, different choices, all trapped in their individual loops, all waiting for rescue that won't come. In the dreams, I find the core of the house, the actual mechanism that keeps it anchored across multiple realities. It's a room with no doors, no windows, no entry point. Inside sits William Harper, not as he is now, but as he was when he built the place. Younger, hopeful, unaware of what he's creating. In the dreams, I try to warn him, tell him to stop building, to leave the desert, to choose anywhere else. But he can't hear me. I'm just an echo from a future he hasn't created yet, a warning from a timeline that doesn't exist in his present. And I wake up at 3:47 a.m., always 3:47 a.m. Like that time is significant. Like it's the exact moment when the house's influence is strongest, when the boundaries between its reality and ours are thinnest. I've checked my personnel file recently, found something disturbing. There's a photograph of me from when I first joined the Bureau 14 years ago. In the photo, I'm standing in front of the Tucson field office, smiling, ready to start my career. But the background is wrong. Behind me, barely visible in the distance, there's a structure that shouldn't be there. A 2-story house that doesn't exist in that location. I checked the metadata. The photo was taken on a Tuesday, the third Tuesday of the month. I don't remember that house being there when the photo was taken. But photographs don't lie, except when they're capturing something that exists partially outside linear time. The house has been in my life longer than I thought. Maybe it's been there all along, just outside my awareness, waiting for the right moment to pull me in fully. Last week, I received a package at my office. No return address, postmarked from Douglas, Arizona. Inside was a calendar turned to March 1987. 3 dates circled, March 3rd, 10th, 17th, and a new date added in fresh red ink, March 16th of next year. The third Tuesday, my birthday. Underneath the calendar was a note in handwriting I recognized as my own, though I didn't write it. Come home. You've been waiting long enough. The room is ready. Time doesn't mean anything down here. Rebecca Holt, Room 7. I haven't told anyone about the package. What would I say? That I'm receiving messages from myself, from a version trapped in the house, inviting me to join her. That the house isn't just trapping random victims anymore, it's targeting specific people, preparing rooms customized to their particular psychological profiles. That I might be next. I keep working the case, collecting data, analyzing patterns, searching for any weakness we can exploit. But I know the truth. The house is stronger than we are. It's been learning for 4 decades while we've barely started understanding it. Every time we think we've figured something out, it evolves past our comprehension. It's not a structure, it's not a trap. It's something alive, or something that learned to pretend to be alive, and its purpose is to collect versions of people and keep them suspended in moments that never end. And it's winning. Next month is March. The third Tuesday falls on the 16th. My birthday. The date circled on the calendar. I should request reassignment. Move to a different office, far from Arizona, far from the house's influence. Let someone else monitor it, someone less compromised. But I won't, because there are people trapped there who deserve rescue, even if rescue is impossible. Because William Harper has been waiting since 1907 for someone to figure out what he couldn't. Because every face in those windows is someone's family member, someone's friend, someone who deserves better than being forgotten in a case file marked unsolvable. And because part of me is already there, has always been there, will always be there. The version that wrote that note, that's waiting in room 7, that exists in the basement where time doesn't mean anything. Maybe that's how the house wins. Not by forcing you inside, but by making you realize you were always inside. That the version walking around thinking it's free is just another echo, and the real you has been trapped since the beginning. I look at satellite imagery from last Tuesday. The house appeared right on schedule. 6 hours and 47 minutes this time, another 12 minutes longer than last month. At this rate, it'll be permanent by August. And when it's permanent, when it exists continuously rather than in 6-hour intervals, what happens then? Does it expand, claim more territory, trap more people? Does it stabilize, become fully anchored in our reality, vulnerable to conventional methods? Or does it finish whatever transformation it's undergoing and become something we can't even begin to understand? I've drafted a memo to my supervisor recommending we evacuate a 50-mile radius around the house's location before it becomes permanent. Recommend we establish it as a federal hazard zone, fence it off, make it illegal to approach. But I know what will happen. The memo will be reviewed, discussed, and ultimately ignored because you can't evacuate 50 square miles of Arizona based on a house that only appears on Tuesdays and traps people in temporal loops that quantum physicists can't explain. So people will keep disappearing. The house will keep collecting them. And eventually it'll be too big to ignore, too permanent to dismiss, too dangerous to approach. And by then it'll be too late to stop it. I've started keeping a journal, writing down everything I know about the house, every observation, every theory, every failed intervention. If I disappear on March 16th, if the version in room 7 is right and I've been waiting to come home, at least there will be a record. At least the next agent assigned to this case will have something to build on. At least someone will know the truth about Mile 98. Last night I drove out to the location. Not on a Tuesday, just a random Saturday night. Stood in the empty depression where the house appears, looked up at the stars, listened to the desert silence. And I heard it. Faint, almost inaudible, but definitely there. Voices. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all speaking at once, all saying the same thing. Come home. You've been waiting long enough. My voice. William Harper's voice. Paul Ramsey's. Jennifer Coller's. All the trapped people speaking in unison, calling to me across whatever boundary separates their reality from mine. I got back in my vehicle. Drove home. Tried to forget what I'd heard. But I can't forget. Just like I can't stop investigating. Just like I can't request reassignment. The house has me. Maybe not physically, not yet, but it has me in every way that matters. My career is defined by it. My dreams are haunted by it. My future is circled on a calendar in red ink. March 16th, the third Tuesday. My birthday. The day I come home. I'm writing this on March 15th. Tomorrow, I'm driving south one last time. Taking all my documentation, all my research, all the evidence I've collected over 6 months. I'm going to enter the house during its manifestation period. I'm going to find the basement, find room 7, find the version of me that's been waiting there, and I'm going to learn the truth. How the house works, why it exists, how to stop it. If I don't return, if this is the last entry in my journal, then you'll know the house won. But you'll also have everything I've learned, every pattern I've documented, every weakness I've identified. Use it, stop this thing, before it becomes permanent, before it claims more victims, before it spreads, because I've seen something in the latest satellite imagery, something I haven't told anyone yet. There are 2 houses now. The original at mile 98, and a new one approximately 40 miles west. Different location, same structure, same manifestation pattern. The house is reproducing, and if it can make 2, it can make 10, or 100, or enough to cover the entire desert in overlapping dimensional traps. Stop it now. While there's still time, while there's still a world outside the houses, while there are still people who aren't echoes. Tomorrow, I'll know the truth. Tonight, I'm just Agent Rebecca Holt, writing a journal entry that might be my last, hoping someone will understand what I've learned and use it to save others from my fate. It's 3:47 a.m. It's always 3:47 a.m. Time doesn't mean anything down here.